across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon to you. Just gone 4 o'clock. We're live across the UK. This, of course, is Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. And thank you to the Housewife's Choice. Ian Collins back tomorrow afternoon between 1 and 4. I'm moving today to deliberately annoy the person that's controlling the cameras. Welcome to Drive. Hope you had a good weekend. I had a weird weekend. More of that coming up. But listen, there is so much to talk about, as I say, each and every day on this show. You decide. What am I going to throw out at you? I don't know, you must have been listening to Talk all day. You'll know the main stories, but the one that shocked me so much that I sent it around at 5:20 this morning was an Albanian criminal. Yes, this is true, ladies and gentlemen, allowed to stay in the United Kingdom, partly, I should underline that, partly, because the official decided that his son would suffer in the condition that he suffers from if he couldn't eat chicken nuggets from this country, because chicken nuggets in another country would not be good for him. An immigration tribunal ruled that it would be unduly harsh. You paid, my friends, probably for that tribunal, and indeed for the judges, no, not the judges, the lawyers to defend the man. So let me get this absolutely right. There are people in this country, yes, straight on my soapbox, who are struggling to have almost any support from the system in terms of, I don't know, doctors, operations, I don't know, some incapacity benefits, some unemployment benefit. But if you don't want to go home, despite the fact that you've done wrong, you can use your son as an excuse and say, he doesn't like eating chicken nuggets. You think I'm making this? It's true. That is absolutely true. That's what we've become. And as if that wasn't bad enough, and I'm going to take complete aim at this bunch of Gen Z, yeah, you entitled bunch of, you haven't achieved jack yet, think Britain is racist, and only a tenth would risk their lives to defend this country in a war, which tells me all I need to know. You're not, a bit like the Labour government, you're not proud of this country, you're not bothered about our legacy or heritage, or actually why you're here in a democracy able to have the lives you have. You want to trash it, you don't respect it. Why don't you bugger off and live somewhere else then? Am I missing the point? Why is it that people criticise this country the whole time? They want to come to this country, then they criticise it, or they live here and they think they know it all and they criticise it. Why don't you all just do one and leave the people in this country who love this country and believe this country is special? Why don't you just leave it to us? 0344 499 1000. Text to 8722. Start your message with the word talk. Jody is taking your calls. Ryan loves the WhatsApp. He's not here tomorrow. It's his wife's birthday. She's taking him for a massage. Make of that what you will. 87222 is the text message. If you want to send him a little voice note wishing him a massage or a nice massage tomorrow. 0344 499 1000. A lot also said over the weekend, and quite rightly on a serious note, about those appalling WhatsApp messages that led to the sacking of the health minister, of course, Andrew Gwynn. Starmer reacting quite quickly for him. This is a WhatsApp group. I think it was called, I'm trying to remember what the name of it was because he hasn't written it down for me, which makes me look really, really inefficient. But anyway, there was a whole bunch of them sending what can only be described as disgusting messages. WhatsApp messages that centred on anti-Semitism. They were misogynistic. Another young MP, a certain, what's his name, Oliver Ryan. He's only 29. The new Burnley MP has also been charged, or he's been accused by the newspapers today of being involved in this. You wonder how far it goes and how deep it goes. And I'm all for, you know, people being able to let off steam, but the sorts of things that were said in these WhatsApp messages does point to the fact that presumably Labour hasn't got over his anti-Semitism problems. And I mean that seriously. 0344 499 1000. While we're at the Labour Party, let's go the full hog. Andrew Gwynn, the then health minister, fired for making sexist, racist, misogynistic and anti-Semitic comments, replaced today, what is wrong with Starmer? He's just an idiot. Replaced by the new man, Ashley Dalton. And this is a man, ladies and gentlemen, who says it's perfectly acceptable. Oh, it's a woman. It's a woman? Ashley Dalton's a woman. Oh, there you are. Well done for putting that. It's a woman. The new health minister says that it's OK to identify an alarmer. This was in tweets on Earth today. Slightly bizarre. And that women can have a penis. So there you are. Our new health minister says it's OK, women can have a penis. Oh, don't you yearn for those old days when a woman was a woman? You know, the old-fashioned ones that had a womb. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. strap yourselves in. You let the thing up so I can look out the window, and I'm going straight to our first guest, the legend and chairman of British PAC, former MEP, good friend of the show, Ben Habib. A very good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Jeremy. I was holding my head in my hands listening to those stories. I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it?
I don't know where to start with you, so I'll tell you how we're going to start. We're going to start with I've been quite vocal about anti-Semitism in this country. I find all racism abhorrent, and I genuinely mean that. But it strikes me sometimes that a lot of the Jewish community, and I have a lot of Jewish friends, get a hard ride, and anti-Semitism isn't perhaps looked at as other forms of racism. It seems to me it's alive and well and kicking in the Labour Party, if you look at what's happened over the weekend.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say, actually, Jeremy, it's alive and kicking in our regulatory framework. You know, we've talked before about diversity, equity and inclusion and the way it puts a protected blanket around minority ethnicities, minority religious beliefs and so on. But actually, even though you'd expect Jews to get the same protection that other minorities, ethnicities and religious believers get, even though they're in that grouping, actually, because there's such a small number, 200,000 Jews in the United Kingdom, and, for example, there are 4 million Muslims in the United Kingdom, if everyone in that group is protected equally, that means the dominant group within the protected status, and remember, anyone within that grouping doesn't have protection from each other. It's only from the majority that they have protection, means that they're vulnerable because it's another protected group taking the Jewish community to task or, prejudicing against the Jewish community. And I think that's part of the problem here. In the pursuit of the protection of all ethnicities and minorities, we've actually created a regulatory framework that makes the Jewish community particularly vulnerable.
Couldn't agree
to
more.
Those with whom they should be sharing protection.
Couldn't agree
it's
more.
It's an absurdity. Yeah.
I think it's disgusting. And then, of course, your reason you had your head in your hands, apart from me not knowing that the new Health Minister, Ashley Dalton, was a woman, Andrew Gwynn, outed because of these revolting WhatsApp messages over the weekend, was sacked and has been suspended, had the whip taken away. That's not going to go away. Closely followed by a new young 29-year-old Burnley MP, Oliver Ryan. He's been accused of the same. We'll wait and see. But don't worry, because Starmer, the man who can, really get stuff sorted, has got a new health minister, Ashley Dalton, and she says in tweets on Earth today, it's OK for people to identify as a llama, Mr. Starmer, and she also thinks that women can have a penis. Ben Habib.
Well, I don't know what the lesser of the evils are there, but, Starmer himself thinks that 1% of women have penises, doesn't he? He said 99% of women do not have a penis, but that, therefore 1% do.
Oh, I've thought of the latest. Farmer Harmer, Granny Harmer and Llama Farmer Harmer. And whatever, Starmer likes the llama. It's all happening.
But they're mad. And I think it's the same. It's the same. The cause of this problem is the same root why Gen Z don't believe in our nation, think that we're all should be ashamed of ourselves and so on. It's this sort of extreme form of liberalism that champions the individual against the interests of the majority, which tells the individual that you can identify as a llama, you can identify as a woman even though you're a man, and informs people actually that it is their rights that are over and above and to the detriment, if necessary, of the majority interest, because they're so important. The individual is so important. And when you promote the individual to such important level and you set aside the majority interest, you're effectively setting aside the country. You're saying the country doesn't really matter. It's all about you. You can be whatever you want.
I think you're so right. We seem to concentrate, don't we? Certainly the ideology, I think, of the Labour Party and Gen Z and just liberals in their entirety is they'll take the most, to the rest of us, outrageous cases of individuals. A person can identify as a llama. Really? I mean, you're the health minister. There's 7 million bloody people waiting to get a doctor's appointment. I would have thought, you've got a job on your hands. You're so right, though, because I sit here sometimes, Ben, and I think, is it me? And I know it's not me, because I know that the majority in this country would go, what the hell? It's like I tell that story on the show before about going to Brighton University with my daughter, and literally, I mean, I put up with two people that had tails and were furries. I put up with a bloke on a skateboard in a pink tutu with a monkey under his arm. I'm not joking. When I went to go to the loo and it said anybody's welcome, not male or female, I went for a pee in the car park. It seems to me that we're missing the basic, rudimentary, normal, everyday things that we all live our lives by, and they get laughed at and ignored nowadays.
Absolutely. And, you know, if you were to look for a parallel in history, it would be the fall of the Roman Empire, where, you know, people ceased to wish to defend Rome. They welcomed in people who were antipathetic to them, lost the plot, fiddled while Rome was burning, and that's what we're doing to our country, to our great country. And you know, without wishing to digress, we've got to look at what's happening across the Atlantic and start doing what Trump's doing if we want to save ourselves. We've got to ditch this DEI nonsense. We've got to regard everyone as equal in the country, assuming they're British citizens. And if they're not British citizens, they certainly shouldn't be getting the same rights that British citizens get.
But you know, I'm going to take. I just want to say to you that therein, for me, lies the argument on a very serious note. If they're British citizens, no. They shouldn't. They're getting more rights than British citizens, and I think that is the very, very annoying thing. I think people who come to this country because they perhaps don't like their country, or maybe they're I don't think they're escaping war-torn, not all of them. But what I object to is they come here because apparently where they are from is no good. They spend most of the time, and I'll include Gen Z in this, who were born here, just slagging it off. If you don't like it, if you find it so utterly illiberal and so fascist, or what is it, racist as a Gen Z, go somewhere else, because you're entitled, and real hard-working people are missing out. And I don't think that's an outrageous thing to say, Ben. I really don't.
I think it's absolutely spot on. I think you're absolutely spot on. I was wrong to say that, you know, illegal migrants. Well, I didn't say it, but I implied that they get the same treatment as British citizens. That's not right. They get a much better shake of the dice than we do.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely absurd. We saw Windsor Council, for example, last week. It was discovered having spent £140 million on laptops and other benefits for illegal migrants. Windsor Council, which is basically bust, and wants to increase its council tax by 25% just so that it can break even.
Lived in Windsor up to a year ago. There's a hotel in Datchet, a really nice, classy hotel that people used to get married in. It's got 300 illegal migrants. You see them walking the streets of Datchet, and normal, everyday people, older people. It's an older town.
Not right.
Too scared to go out. And for people who think that's racist,
they should be in jail.
Absolutely agree. And just very quickly about Gen Z, and I'm allowed to because I'm 60 this year. I know I don't look it. I don't. Maybe our parents said it about us, but I was brought up to be proud of our country. When I look at what our country's become, even I'm losing pride. But what I hate is this lack of gratitude from the younger generation. I don't understand that. You spend so much time, Gen Z, worrying about pontificating, ideology. Yes, I'm sure your sentiment in part is okay, but you should be very careful not to wish. Be careful what you wish for, is what I would say, because this country has done and is doing a lot of good things. It might have gone off track a bit because of these sorts of people, but I hate people bashing this country the whole time, Ben. I really do.
I mean, you know, what they need to do is reflect just momentarily on the logic of their position and recognise that only in a very tolerant country would their ridiculous views be tolerated. And it is because we're such a great country, that we come from such a rich past, and we are such a delicate political ecosystem, that we afford them the ridiculous right to trash the country in the way that they do, that they can do it. And therefore, just by them holding these awful views, they should recognise, actually, the place in which they live is great. Many countries across this globe, faced with the kind of criticism that they get from Gen Z and other people in this country, would actually find themselves behind bars because of the way that they treat their country. The other thing I just want to add, we've talked about how DEI has created this kind of protected status of people who hold the country in contempt, etc. But there's another thing that's going on, of which you're very well aware, and you've touched on it already, is we as a people can't believe ourselves to be legitimate. We can't be proud of ourselves. We can't understand our modern contextual situation if we don't understand our history, It's our history that informs us about our legitimacy, our cultural context, our values, and so on. And it's our history that continually gets attacked, in part, in order to make other cultures more welcome here than ours. And that's what's destroying us. It's this sort of propensity and desire to self-harm, including rewriting history. I read a great quote the other day when someone said, of course I can't tell you what's going to happen. I can hardly tell you what's happened because they keep rewriting it.
And also the point, somebody said in the office today, at what point do you draw a line? Are you trying to tell me, this is what I also want to say to Gen Z, and I'm getting older by the minute. I'm sure mistakes were made in the past, but there were many, many great things that made this country Great Britain, that gave you, Gen Z, your liberty. There's so many great things about this country that get swallowed and forgotten about as this raft of ridiculousness seems to sweep over it. Topped today by my favourite story, Ben Habib, I ever will tell you about. I left it till last because only you can put this into words that don't send me through the roof. An Albanian criminal, ladies and gentlemen, was allowed to stay in the United Kingdom partly because his son will not eat foreign chicken nuggets. You think I'm making this up? An immigration tribunal ruled that it would be unduly harsh for the young boy, 10, to be forced to move with his father to Albania, owing to his sensitivity around food. This is irrespective of the fact that he wouldn't have been put in this position if his father hadn't broken the bloody law and looked close to deportation. But no, there we go. We'll use the European Court of Human Rights. We'll grab ourselves a freebie human rights lawyer and we'll make a complete mockery over everybody listening to this who doesn't break the law, who are looking at their radios going, somebody stayed here by saying their son wouldn't like Albanian chicken nuggets. Here's an example of where I'm embarrassed to be in the United Kingdom right now, Ben Habib.
Yeah, and there you go. That's another example of where the individual's right to choose his chicken nuggets has actually trumped the majority's interest in deporting this criminal. You know, it's another one of those examples of liberalism gone wrong, where the individual is all important and the interests of the majority just have to be set aside. I read another article this morning in which a Pakistani paedophile, an actual Pakistani national paedophile, was not being sent back to Pakistan because it would impact his children's right to a family life, which is protected under the European Convention of Human Rights. What about the lives of the children he abused? You know, we just live in this kind of topsy-turvy world. We've got to get a grip.
I don't even know it's topsy-turvy. I think it's dangerous. Are you happy to stay with me? We'll do a call. We'll go to London.
Absolutely.
Georgina, you're on Talk. Drive, myself and Ben Habib. What you got?
Well, I'm actually just reeling from what I've just been hearing about the Pakistani paedophile. I just want to say, people who do not love the English flag should go to the country where they do love. They're waving Palestinian flags all over London and have been for a while. If they love the country that much, why are they here? Why are they waving their flags here? The Union Jack is our flag, and I'm very, very proud to be living under that flag. I think the way the country is at the moment is totally wrong. The Prime Minister needs to be able to run his own house and the people within it before he even attempts to run a country. This is totally ridiculous. He's treating the country like it's his own private domain. No, he was appointed by the British people to do a job, and he's totally unfit for purpose. He's making so many mistakes. No, seriously, he needs to find some testicular fortitude and go forward and do what is right for the English people.
Absolutely.
I know many elderly people around this area who are terrified of putting their heating on. It's either, you know, I went to visit one poor old dear and she's wrapped in 2 blankets and her house is freezing cold. This is not acceptable when the governments are buying PlayStations and good knows.
And can I jump in because it's on my screen for some reason? Today we find that Rayner, his deputy, refuses to deny that she said that he was incapable of running a bath, Ben Habib. I mean, is he capable of running? Maybe it's the truest bloody thing Angela Rayner's ever said. I agree with Georgina completely.
Yeah. I mean, Georgina is spot on. And I think one of the points Georgina's making is that we haven't done anything really to promote our national culture. You know, we we allow people to be ashamed of the Union flag, of which we should be very, very proud. And I bet none of those people who are flying those Palestinian flags are now going off to Gaza to help rebuild Gaza now that they've got a ceasefire. I bet they're not. They're just marching up and down our streets causing trouble. Starmer can't run a bath. I think that's underestimating the damage that Starmer does to this country, underestimating his attitude to the country. Actually, as I think I've said to you before, Jeremy, I think he's anti-British. He is someone which would give up the nation state of the United Kingdom, to the global liberal order, take us back into the EU, hand over monetary control, give up the pound, give up our borders, give up lawmaking, just become district councillors. Again, it's a kind of symptom of dying Rome, where you just don't give a damn. You just want to eat your grapes, drink your wine, and have orgies. That's how I see Starmer.
Georgina, thank you very much. Ben Habib leaves me with a lovely thought. You go to an ad break. I'm going to crush some grapes and have an orgy. Back in 3.
Long last, common sense has to prevail. The reason you make the difference about men and women's sport is men are stronger. It's that simple. So you have that sort of basis that any sports that rely on strength, physical strength, you make the distinction.
Yeah. And the IOC, its policy is a little more complicated than that. It actually is sport by sport.
Yes.
So in the Olympics, you have quite a few sports where trans women, in other words, blokes pretending to be women, are banned.
Yes.
From competing against women, and yet other sports they are allowed to do it, including boxing.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
4:25, loads to get in. Can I just say to Jay in Coventry, no, I haven't missed the elephant in the room. I know about the farmers' protest. We will be going live down to Westminster later. Matt Cullen, a fourth-generation beef farmer who's been on this show before, will give us the latest. They are, quite rightly, the farmers protesting at Starmer's seeming desire to wipe out and land grab and build wind farms and screw us all. That will come up. Breaking news on Talk. Breaking news. Hamas has just said, here's a surprise, it's delaying the release of Israeli hostages hostages until further notice. It says it's a response to Israel breaching the Gaza ceasefire agreement, which of course began last month. Israel yet to comment. Have been unconfirmed reports of shootings and stuff carrying on. I don't know the truth about that, but just to break the news and talk, Hamas says it is delaying the release of any more Israeli hostages until further notice. It says that is a response to Israel breaching the Gaza ceasefire agreement. 0344 499 1000. Whatever you want to talk about. It's very simple. Text to 87222. We'll talk nuggets. Graham in Bushy. Are the judges two chickens to deport the illegal person? Very good. Next is a man who puts, well, do you know what? He puts the quality into political journalism. Harry Cole, political editor of The Sun. A very good afternoon. How are you?
I'm very well, Jeremy Kyle. How are you?
You're looking very smart, son. What have you had a shave?
I'm over in Parliament. We have to dress up over here. We're not all, can't all be in open collars.
OK. And let's just be honest to each other. What week in the entire year are we looking forward most to, Harry?
I'm looking forward to 1 week where this government doesn't do something completely nuts.
No, you're not. You're looking forward to Cheltenham like me, you idiot. Answer the question. We're both taking the week off.
Now Sir Gino is out. I'm looking forward to day one of Cheltenham slightly less. But,
can I just say you shouldn't mention...
Sad news about that today.
Don't mention Gino on this show. Right, let's crack on. Harry, loads to talk to you about. Let us start with the story you sent me 2 hours ago. And I say this respectfully, OK? Andrew Gwynn, these disgusting WhatsApp messages over the weekend, the young Burnley MP, whose name escapes me for 1 minute, but I'll get it there, Oliver Ryan. He's been dragged into this. Everybody jumping up and down over the weekend saying there is still anti-Semitism rife in the Labour Party, despite what Keir Starmer says. So Keir Starmer, it seems, acted quite quickly. Today, he's named a new health minister, Ashley Dalton. Please do fill us in about his new health minister. This is ludicrous, Harry Cole.
Well, Ashley Dawson believes that if you identify as a llama, you should be treated with dignity and respect in all senses of the word. She is a proper pro-trans activist, doesn't believe there should be gendered bathrooms, thinks women can have a penis, and generally is the new acceptable face of the modern Labour Party.
And you think about that, and you step back from that, and you think about the people that listen and watch your programmes, our programmes, and you think, so many people in this country, up and down this country, 7 million of them, can't get a doctor's appointment. We're behind with operations. Our health service is on its backside. There are arguments left, right and centre. And there again, ideology over substance. The first thing we're going to discover about this person is she thinks it's OK to identify as a llama. What does she think about pensioners on trolleys for 17 hours in hospitals because the NHS is on its backside? I don't get these people.
I think the entire vetting department of Downing Street must have taken the week off already, because to go from Andrew Gwynn, obviously a man who's been exposed for some fairly torrid views, I think you can bat away some of the stuff, but what he said about being able to identify someone as Jewish just from their surname and whether they're a member of Mossad just because they had a Jewish-sounding name, stuff like that is the worst sort of bits of the Labour Party we saw. And Keir Starmer said he drummed out when he got rid of Jeremy Corbyn. Now, just as the global conversation about trans rights and trans nonsense is beginning to become a little bit more sensible. Look at what Donald Trump did in his first day of office with a flick of the pen, basically saying the US government recognises only two genders. It's putting that sort of conversation back to a reality-based norm that it hadn't been in for many years. And just as that's beginning to happen in this country, people are waking up. People are beginning to realise that actually the trans lobby has been extremely sort of over-vocal, over-critical, and actually quite sort of pernicious in some ways in their bids for censorship. Just as there's a big backlash towards that, they go and make a health minister, no less, an actual health minister, someone who literally is anti-science.
To me, unbelievable. And can I just say, you delivered there and you don't even know how brilliant a line you delivered. You said, and I quote, about the new health minister who believes that it's OK to identify as a llama. You felt the vetting process in number 10 wasn't at its best so far
well,
this
I think
week.
The vetting process, I think someone should call a doctor quicker.
Yeah, I think so. Let's talk about MP salaries. This is in the news as well today. You're over in Westminster. MP's pay will soar to, nearly £94,000 next year as Commons bosses recommend a hike of more than £2,000. It's a 2.8% rise, which is above the rate of inflation, was branded a bitter pill to swallow amid pensioners losing their winter fuel payments and farmers, obviously today in Westminster, taking to the streets to protest tax hikes. What's the feeling on the ground over in Westminster about that?
For the defence, you don't hear me say this very often, but for politics and defence, ever since the expenses crisis, they took away the ability for MPs to set their own pay. So actually, this is an independent body that takes into account public sector pay rises more generally, and obviously they've been very generous in the last few months since the new Labour government came in. Lots of public sector workers getting a big pay hike. They also sort of pin it to where sort of pay generally is around the tail end of last year. They sort of track it to that. That said, though, for the people who lost their winter fuel payments this year, for people that are feeling the tail end of this Labour budget, the sharpest bits of it still haven't kicked in yet, with lots of the tax rises due to start in April. This will just come as another sort of, just another roll of the eyes, and it's all right for some, isn't it? So 2.8% pay rise. It's broadly in line with the public sector. It's a little bit higher than inflation, but it just ever creases on. I think lots of people would like to see a ministerial pay freeze, which the last government had in place for a long time. They're not quite clear yet whether that's been extended. And also, MPs could vote to reject it. They could just say, no, we don't want this pay rise, but we'll see if that ever happens.
And I think also your point is so good that, I don't know whether Starmer deliberately manages to muck up the timings of almost everything, but he's just had to sack a health minister for anti-Semitism and grotesque language. He's got a new one who patently thinks that, it's OK to be a llama. And people, even if they are more invested in politics, are going, hold on a minute, I'm really struggling. I've said in the past, and it didn't go down very well, I think we don't pay our politicians enough. I think we'd have a better quality if we had less and paid more. I could be totally wrong, but I understand that people would look at that right now and think that's out of order. Can I talk to you? I've heard this all day on this station, but I want your take on this. I think it's really important. Certain Tories admitting that they wouldn't rule out forming a mega party with Reform UK. Nigel Farage out the blocks early this morning saying, listen, we were deceived in 2019, Boris Johnson and the like, we're happy doing our thing. For me, I just want to put this at you, it's changed the language. It's not Reform who are even talking or looking. It seems to me that the Tories trailing third in most recent polls, there's more talk amongst them about liaising with Reform, who don't seem to be interested. I guess that would be true, yeah?
Well, I think so. Look, don't forget, these are two parties that are vying, fishing in the same pond. So obviously, any deal is now, it's probably still 3-4 years away from an election at the earliest. So, you expect them both, the leadership of both parties, to be sort of publicly saying no. But behind the scenes, in the pubs, in the ornate clubs of Pall Mall, where so much right-wing politics seems to get carved up these days, there is definitely discussions going on between what a Reform deal could look like. I've read about this in The Sun this morning, actually. It's not necessarily that they would go into an election with a deal, but what would a pact look like after an election, where if some of the more recent opinion polling and the opinion polling trends are going, would suggest that there's a chance that the Tories would have a bit of a comeback, Reform would make a massive breakthrough, and together they could combine to lock out Labour, to defeat the government. Obviously, this far out of an election, a lot can happen. If you look at 3 years out of the last election, the political playing field looked incredibly different. But without a significant turnaround in Labour's fortunes and a significant turnaround in Tory fortunes, I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest that we're heading towards a sort of three-party state in terms of the right very split. How that will exactly break down and what would happen after that remains to be seen. But it's pretty clear that, Farage is the one with the big momentum. Yep. The Tories are the ones that are starting to cluck. And, that puts Farage in an incredibly strong negotiating position come after whatever happens. And, people around him say the only price that he would demand is he's the boss.
Very interesting. Also, breaking news, and you can respond to this straight away. I'm sure you've got it on your screen.
I know what you're going to say, yeah.
Labour has just suspended Burnley MP Oliver Ryan, the party, over his membership of that WhatsApp group that contained offensive comments. The comments were homophobic, misogynistic, racist and anti-Semitic as well. Your response to that quickly, Harry?
I think, he was sort of in trouble from the moment he woke up this morning. I think this was a matter of time, and right on cue, just as the papers are starting to file for deadline, Labour have moved.
You see, I learned so much from you, but I've also learned that Sir Gino's not running at Cheltenham. We're looking forward to that week. We thank you enormously.
I know. There goes my quadruple.
Yeah, but listen, I don't want you to drink anything that week. I want you to be teetotal. Thank you very much indeed. The legend that is Harry Cole. What is it? 24 minutes to 5 o'clock. We're live across the UK. So much to talk about. Labour have just suspended Burnley MP Oliver Ryan on the back of sacking the Health Minister Andrew Gwynn at the weekend. These disgusting messages on WhatsApp may be proving that there are still major problems with anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. Starmer has a new health minister, Ashley Dalton, who thinks it's all right to identify as a llama and believes that women can have a penis. If you didn't think that was bad enough, my friends, you might be interested to know that if you break the law and you come from Albania and you're about to be deported, if you stand up and you go, "We can't go back to Albania, my son doesn't like the chicken nuggets there," this bloody country will let you stay. Let me know what you think of it all, please. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Right now, though, time to find out how you could be in with a chance of winning £25,000.
It's competition time, and we're giving you a chance to win a whopping £25,000. So what do you need to do to get involved? All you have to do is text the word prize to 83338, or you can enter by post. It's as simple as that. Once again, to get involved, just text the word prize to 83338, or you can enter by post.
18 plus, UK excluding NI. Enter by SMS for £2 plus one standard network charge by 11 p.m. on March the 3rd, 2025. Or send your name, email and contact number to £25,000 cash competition, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on March the 6th, 2025. This is a News Broadcasting Network promotion. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 20 minutes to 5. Hello to Bill in Romsey, who says Reform don't need to liaise with or join up with the Tories. Jez, if they gain 2% of the popular vote every year for the next 4 years, they will end up at 34%. That will be enough. Here's a voice note from Ian on MP's pay rises. Go.
Hi, Jeremy. It's Ian from East Grinstead. Off topic, just on the news. How can those snivelling MPs give themselves a 2.9% pay rise? All they've done is destroyed the country, and they continue to do so. They have no idea what the hell they're doing, and this applies to both parties. It's an absolute disgrace. Either pay a few very good people well, but do not pay this middling load of rubbish, 90-odd grand per person, to do nothing.
Very interesting, Ian. 0344 499 1000. David in the Cotswolds. That's not David Beckham in the Cotswolds, is it? Oh, my God, Jodie, we could have had David Beckham messages. It says David in the Cotswolds. Jezza, me old mate. Could be him. So the new health minister, who believes people can identify as llamas, herself identifies as an LGBT woman. Well, await the new policies about coming out of that department. Maybe I'll be able to get pregnant soon, and soon my wife could grow a penis. There we go. To the phone lines in Glasgow. Norrie, you're on Talk Drive. Good evening. How are you?
Good evening, Jason. Thank you very much for taking my call, pal. Jason, the world's going crazy, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Now, regarding this young child, I'm not actually sure where his parents are from, whether it's, I'm not even going to guess where they're from. The quality of nuggets, if he's sent back home, will not be the same as he has to this quality in Britain. Now, number one, that young guy, if that's the kind of diet he's on, eventually he's going to be obese. Eventually he's going to have to get NHS treatment.
Yep.
One more reason why this country's... we're strong. You just mentioned there people trying operations at some appointments with GP. That young guy would go in front of the queue.
Listen, mate, I struggle, and when I finish on a Wednesday, I go home and I say to myself, Norrie, now come on, Jess, next week it's going to be a lot better. And then I get here and it's not. We're allowing somebody to stay here because his son likes chicken. It's so ludicrous, mate. We've got a health minister who thinks it's all right to be a llama. I don't know. I don't know anymore. I don't know. And yet farmers, people who literally are feeding us in the pouring rain, are in Westminster having to try and stop this government from taking their businesses away and ruining generations, because the bloody Labour Party don't understand. We'll then have to import food, which costs a lot more money.
It's diabolical, mate. Now, see, on the subject of that llama, I know you've got a busy show there. See, regarding the llama.
Yes.
Put her out in the field for a month, let her eat grass, see how she copes.
Completely agree with you. When I said that, I got into trouble. Somebody said I wanted to identify as a cat. I said, good, I'll give you cat food for the next month. Norrie, my best, even I said breast then, to Glasgow. 4:45, 0344 499 1000. Delighted with my next guest to come on. Political commentator, he's got a gob on him. Jamie Jenkins, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon, all good. Jeremy, how are you doing?
Well, I was doing all right until I came to work today. I'll throw at you the subjects and see whether it's just me who's going mad, Jamie, or not. So after WhatsApp Gate, quite rightly, Starmer acting to throw at Andrew Gwynn. You'll have heard just earlier, Oliver Ryan, the young 29-year-old MP from Burnley, also just been suspended by Labour. Pretty disgusting things in those WhatsApp messages identified by the Mail over the weekend. Anti-Semitism seemingly rife, homophobia, misogyny, racism. He did right to kick him out. But so much of a dullard is our Prime Minister that he's got a new health minister who believes that people can identify as llamas and women can have a penis. Jamie, talk to me before I get sectioned.
Oh, no, Jeremy. It just goes to show the ludicrous kind of places where the Labour Party's at, isn't it? You've got these ministers, and anti-Semitism has been kind of rife in the Labour Party for many years, and they've struggled to get on top of it. And then you've got these comments coming out. So, yeah, he's right to get rid of him. But how much more of this is going on in the party, who knows? And then, yeah, identifying as a llama, it's just absolute nuts, isn't it, in terms of these kind of Labour politicians. It's just as bad in Wales, where they've been running kind of the country for 25 years here, Jeremy. You know, what hope have we got with people like this in charge? And we're talking in a second about MP salaries, but the people like this deserve.
I mean, that's my point. I'm looking out the window, right, across London, and it is absolutely teeming with rain. And I'm not being London-centric. Wherever you are in the UK, the weather's pretty crap at the moment. And I'm thinking about our farmers. I've got a guy coming on in a couple of hours, Matt Cullen, a friend of the show, is a fourth-generation beef farmer. This government is literally trying to grab their lands by taxing them ridiculous amounts of money that they can't afford, and we've had the explanation before on the show. I think they take between 1% and 2% of the value of the farmer. I mean, they're on 40 grand a year, right? Half of what MPs are. They're working 18 hours a day. They're going to land grab that, Ed Miliband, build wind farms, which won't create enough electricity to give us the electricity we need, so they'll import that 3 times the cost. They'll screw farmers who make the food that we eat, so we'll have to import that, and it'll be 3 times the cost. I don't understand. I get ideology, but we're talking about basic common sense, and I feel like this government, and you know from Wales, has no common sense, Jamie.
No, and on the farmers' point, Jeremy, I think it's worth putting the numbers into context here. So what they estimate that they will get in per year is about $500 million. And they spend 25 times that amount per year on foreign aid. So, you know, where's the priority of this government? We're going after farmers, and they argue, yes, they're very kind of rich in terms of the land that they sit on. But the land that they sit on is worthless unless you start building houses all over the farmland. But we need the farmland to put food on the table, don't we? So,
but it's that whole Labour ideology, isn't it? You know, we're going to talk about growth. Well, how can you? You've screwed every small and medium-sized business in your budget with ridiculous tax rises, which make building a business now an impossible, certainly a profitable one. You're saying to farmers, so you don't understand, they might have 300 acres. It's worthless, as you quite rightly say, but it's not worthless in terms of creating food and jobs. But you want to put wind farms there. I just feel like, I mean, there's this crazy story today about this Nugget Gate. You must have heard this. It's on the front of the Daily Telegraph. I mean, we all go, huh. I end up feeling quite depressed that this is our country, that somebody can expect the taxpayer to fund some left-wing what do they call legal lawyer, some lefty lawyer who will use the ECHR and get a criminal to stay in this country. And yet hard-working farmers, I don't know, mate, this government has its priorities up its backside, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, on the farmers and priorities and politicians, they interviewed the Welsh First Minister around November time, Jeremy, on this farmers' debacle, obviously when the first set of protests were coming up, and rightly the farmers were uproar. And when she was saying, she said, oh, we all need to calm down a little bit until we know how many farmers are affected. Now, from what I looked, I used to work in in the civil service many years ago, Jeremy, and we would look at government policy. And you normally do an impact assessment. How can you roll out a policy with no concept as to how much this is going to impact? It goes to show how amateur these politicians are. Now, the Conservative Party, nobody voted the Tory Party the Labour Party in. They voted the Tory Party out. But what we've ended up with is third, fourth, fifth-rate politicians running this country, and they haven't got a clue what the hell they're doing.
Which leads me on nicely to the final point, and delighted to have you on, always am. A pay rise, 2.8%, slightly above. MP salaries will rise to nearly £94,000. We should point out, this wasn't them suggesting this is an independent body, but still, in terms of a Prime Minister who thinks it's OK to appoint a woman who thinks you can identify as a llama and that women have penises, I would suspect many people driving through the misery of a Monday somewhere in the UK, having worked 12 hours, are going, why the hell is that idiot entitled to 94 grand a year? I mean, I'm being serious.
And 94 grand doesn't really touch the surface as well. Remember, they can claim their accommodation costs, they can claim their travel. They're in a very good pension scheme. There's all the office costs to go with it. Ministers, so the likes of Rachel Reeves, Keir Starmer, they get more as a ministerial salary. So 94,000, much, much more than obviously the average salary. There's two trains of thought here, isn't there, Jeremy? Some people say pay them a lot more, have fewer of them, but have real good talent. But when you see in the stories that you've talked about, people being suspended for their comments, policies being rolled out with no impact assessments, we've got amateur people being paid close to £100,000 a year, destroying this country, destroying the economy. And the value for money argument for the taxpayer is not stacking up with it, is it really?
Completely agree with you. Listen, sorry it's quick, but love having you on. Jeremy Davis, what did I say? Jenkins, political commentator. Thank you very much indeed. Can I just point out, we should respect Nate. Nate's having a bad afternoon, right? He says, I'm a British citizen, and I realised just recently that I don't like British chicken nuggets anymore, so I'm gonna immigrate. Very good, to a different country. 10 to 5. Lovely.
Amongst the bad things that have been said, the thing that stood out was that he described one gentleman as being too Jewish. Now, Keir Starmer told us that he cleaned up the Labour Party, but it very much looks this morning like he hasn't. I think there needs to be a very serious investigation, public investigation into who else was on that group. What did they say? Did they call out Mr Gwynne when he made those anti-Semitic remarks? Because otherwise I think people will just draw the conclusion that this is the same old anti-Semitic Labour Party.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Drive time, 7 minutes to 5. Hello to Phil in Portsmouth. This is You're on Fire. Cliff's in Berkshire. It's sad that Gen Z hate the UK. However, it's not surprising given their education at the hands of the state. The state indoctrination system teach that our country was very bad, did bad things to other countries. Populations divide and rule seems to be the agenda at the moment. Sam's got a voice note. Go.
If Gen Z hate our country so much, why don't they bugger off to New Zealand or Canada, where I'm sure their wokey-cokey leftist ideas will be embraced.
Wokey coke. I completely agree. See, it's not just me. Jez, says Ian, if people want to identify as a llama, they should go and see a vet. Hello to Brain. I think it should be Brian. Great show. Has Starmer identified as an ostrich and buried his head in the sand? Many would say his head is elsewhere, but I could be wrong. Would love, says this, the Labour MPs to be treated the same way as us normal lot and locked up for things we say online, maybe to feel like scum for pointing out the truth, and yet Labour MPs get away with being genuinely right-wing in terms of what they say. Couldn't agree more. Andy in Woolwich, I'm a 62-year-old man, 7.5 years as a welder, made a success of myself, left school at 16. Gen Z, Black Lives Matter, Stonewall and all the rest do not want equality, they want privilege. The illegal migrants don't want our values, they want to turn our once great country into the rat holes that they left. Here's a question for you. Will Starmer allow us to commemorate VE Day? I've no idea. Chris Short, I'm sorry. The government doesn't want to stop illegal migration. They all say, we will stop the boats. But if they were being serious, they would end the incentives from them coming here. Hear, hear. They won't risk their lives crossing the channel if they knew when they got here they would be sleeping on the streets rather than in a plush hotel. That's my point, Chris. When you look across at America and you see pictures of those prisoners shackled and put on a plane, and you see television coverage of people crying at the Mexican border going, I don't think you should go. It's not very nice. I'll send you back. That's called a bleeding deterrent. We'll head north to Staffordshire. James, you're on Talk Drive. 2 minutes. Go.
Hi, Jeremy. Two very quick points. Half the amount of MPs, performance-related pay, the economy goes up. Their pay goes up, the economy goes down, their pay goes down. America has 370-odd million people and 200 and something odd senators. We have 600 and something odd MPs.
It's a very good point, sir.
And then the second point I'm going to make is that, which breaks my heart, but because of the long march left through Marxism colleges and this, that and the other, the civil service is infested, and I mean infested by Marxists. So regardless of whichever government gets in, you'll never get the will of the people done. Can you see Suella Braverman not wanting to stop the votes?
Listen, I couldn't agree more. I do think, I know people who aren't, in the centre on the right laugh when people like I say this, but I think the civil service runs this country. I think it's fair to call them the blob. I think you're right. Somebody once told me that when government changes after an election, 100 MPs, ministers lose their jobs and 100 special advisors. But 4,000 government officials, i.e. civil servants, keep them. And of course, we had that ludicrous scenario when the Tories were in, whether you agreed with Rwanda or not. that civil servants who we're paying their salaries were using our taxpayers' money to take their own government to court because they disagreed with policy. I don't think that's their responsibility. This is a... Rob's in Stourbridge, a voice note on reform. Go.
Jez, you know what a lot of Conservative and Labour don't understand, right, mate, is that people who have never even voted before are going to come out and vote for reform. People who have never even gone near a ballot box, who I speak to, have said to me, they said, I've never ever voted for before, never been interested in it, but now I'm going to the ballot box and I'm going to vote reform.
I was going to say to Harry Cole, I think all this talk about a reform Tory pact, if I was Nigel Farage, I wouldn't be entertaining it either, because I believe that reform will do nothing but grow. I do not think they're a flash in the pan at all. I think they're speaking the language that many people who aren't into all the centrist ideological stuff actually were brought up listening to. Final call this hour. Head north to Lanarkshire. Anne-Marie, literally 2 minutes on Talk Drive. What you got?
I've got over the Nuggets. It's the judges that are collaborating with the lawyers, and they're against British law. The judges don't have the brief that what Human Rights Act actually says. We shouldn't have left-wing judges, for goodness sake.
I mean, you're responding to this story. For people who are just tuning in, an illegal migrant who was facing deportation for a crime, a quite serious crime, got to stay because he used your money, peeps, to get himself a human rights lawyer who used the ECHR to prove to a court that his son, if he moved, would be traumatised because the chicken nuggets in Albania weren't as good as England. And if you think I'm taking the mickey, you're mistaken. Anne-Marie in Lanarkshire, thank you very much indeed. Wow, where did that hour go? I know I've got a minute, Amy, because it says 16:59. Chill your beans, love. We're doing fine. Right. In the next hour, the legend that is James Price, former government special advisor, a man who likes a nugget. See what I did there? Reacting to the news that we have a new health minister, if you're just tuning in, this is tremendous. Ashley Dalton has replaced the disgraced Andrew Gwynn. And Ashley Dalton, we've unearthed some tweets today, or the press have, where she says it's perfectly fine for people to identify as a llama and be treated with respect. Don't get spat on. She also believes, our new health secretary, irrespective of the problems with the health service, that a woman can have a penis. So there you are. As I said earlier, for the old-fashioned women that had a womb. 0344, like my mother-in-law. Why did I say that? 0344 499 1000 is my telephone number. Text to 87222. Whatever you want to talk about in the next 2 hours of drive, please do start your message with the word talk. We will do the news.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, hour 2 of Drive. You will notice as we headed towards the news at 5, Amy got me a corker there. If you're going to have a go at me, Jez, I'm not doing anything, so I trashed it. Anyway, there we go. Welcome back. So much to talk about. Good Lord. Nugget Gate. Yes, you can stay in this country even if you're an illegal migrant or have broken the law if your kid is so keen on English McNuggets, or even nuggets, I shouldn't say McNuggets or any other nugget, that he can't go to another country. We've got a new health minister who thinks it's OK to identify as a llama and for a woman to have a penis. And, of course, most of Gen Z, yes, that entitled bunch of young people, they think that basically this country is racist and 90% of them wouldn't pick up arms to defend us or do something. They're anti-British, that's what they are. We'll go and live in another bloody country then, because I'm quite happy. Well, I'm not happy at the moment, but I will be when this Trotsky's out of number 10, 0344 499 1000. Good afternoon to Steve Chandler. Why don't all the OOPs that had their fuel allowance cut and can't see a doctor identify as a migrant and all their problems will be solved? Very, very true. Or in fact, a llama. And spit on the people that made that. It's a joke, by the way, before somebody goes, he advocated spitting. No, this isn't Sky News or Sky Sports. I'm not going into it. Llamas spit, just in case you got the hump. But that's... never mind. Tristan, hello, Jez. It's now time when reform get into mass... What? Oh, it's now time. When reform get in, they're going to mass fire the civil servants who have gone against government policy. That's the only way to get rid of it. I have to say, Tristan in Bedford, Richard Tice and Nigel have both spoken that is something that they would do and something that needs to be done. Carol in Birmingham, keeping it going. She says, if somebody turns up at A&E professing to be a llama, put him in a field and send him to the vets. Bill says, how does Rayner know that Starmer couldn't run a bath? Oh. Stuart says, don't let Starmer off the hook. This health minister is his a choice. I know, that's why I haven't been letting him off the hook. Stop telling me off. Hello to Charlie and Terry in Slough. Bless him. I wouldn't trust this useless, incompetent Labour government to run a raffle. Never mind one of this great country of ours. Well, it used to be great. Keep your calls coming in. 5 past 5 0344 499 1000. You can phone to our Judy. She's gone off to find chocolate and tea. You can do a WhatsApp voice note to Ryan. Don't get on the other side of Amy. She'll get quite stroppy. Text to 87222. Start your message with the word talk. And we say a very good afternoon to a good friend of mine. Still haven't had that beer because, well, I'm a busy man. And so's he. James Price, former government special advisor. Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm very well. Would that beer get more enticing if I offered some chicken nuggets along with it as well?
Mate, I swear to God, we've done this for a couple of years. I mean, we'll talk about everything else, but let's just start with the fact that this country, and when I was brought up, it's Great Britain. It's and I hate, we'll talk about Gen Z trashing it, but when I read stories like this Albanian criminal had committed a serious criminal offence and was due for deportation, presumably an immigration, it was an immigration tribunal. It has been sent to another judge now. Let's point that out. That part of the Telegraph story needs to be said. This could end up changing. But as it stands, our money, our tax money, was spent on a left-wing human rights law enacting yet another dodgy part of the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights. And he managed to stay in this country despite being a convicted criminal because his son couldn't deal with eating Albanian chicken nuggets. I'd just love Trump here for 5 minutes on something like this. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, it does make a mockery of the law. It makes a mockery of our country. It makes a mockery of the fact that everybody watching this will be out going off to work or have spent their lives going off to work to pay the salaries of people that allow this sort of stuff to happen. There is an element of which in America, they talk about the separation of powers. And they talk about the separation of powers between the legislature, the executive and the judiciary, between Parliament and the Prime Minister or the President and judges. We don't have to worry about that in our, frankly, superior British system because Parliament is supposed to be sovereign sovereign. So we could just write laws that stop any of this nonsense happening. And we haven't done that. And we have let activist lefty judges run completely rampant. And if you want proof of that, look at this case here. As you say, some horrible, horrible person who's committed some disgraceful crime so bad that they're being deported or supposed to be being deported. That's not going to happen because their child doesn't want to eat foreign chicken nuggets. And the other part of the story was that they sometimes don't like putting on their socks. Not making that up. That's another part of this story as well.
Sorry, Ryan. They don't like what?
The child likes to make a fuss about things, including putting on their socks, and that makes this a difficult child, and therefore it would all be so doubly unfair for their criminal. Was it a sex assault?
So I'll tell you how I deal. I've got 6 of them. If my child said I'm only eating chicken nuggets and I've got difficulties putting socks on, and before you get involved and start complaining, they're my children. They would never have chicken nuggets again. I wouldn't feed them for 24 hours, and I put them outside in the snow without any shoes and socks on, and they'd sure as eggs is eggs have it sorted. What is happening? What is happening? And just if I can add on top of this, I mean, obviously you will have read over the weekend that really genuinely distasteful WhatsApp messages. Let's not be too pious. I'm sure we've all been involved at times and we've sent a joke or something on WhatsApp, and I don't want to police people, but what Andrew Gwynn and his merry bunch of Labour Trotskyites, as I call them, were speaking about was the very thing, strangely, that the Labour Party is always pontificating about. Starmer had said, you know, it's gone. I've splurged. Anti-Semitism is not rife in our party. Angela Rayner and all of these people always talk about the Tories are misogynistic, Reform are sexist, racist, fascist. Well, actually, all of that was involved in those WhatsApp messages. So Starmer acting quite quickly, sacks Andrew Gwynn, and today Oliver Ryan, the 29-year-old Burnley MP who was involved in those as well, has just been suspended. Before I talk about the new health minister, your response to that?
Do you know, I'm sort of in two minds in some ways, because I'm sick to the back teeth of language policing, of even tone policing, this idea that, oh, you didn't actually say anything wrong, but it was a microaggression because I didn't like the way he looked at me, or he smiled a bit too much, or he didn't smile enough, or any of this. He did make eye contact, he didn't make eye contact, he did flirt with me, he didn't flirt with me, and all this sort of stuff. Right? But I mean, hates the fact that we've got that we have to be so careful about what we say now, being too polite, not all this sort of stuff. At the same time, the people who are propagating this are the socialists and the communists in the Labour Party. They've been doing this all the time. Whatever they say you are, it turns out they actually are. And look, again, for these guys who are so, as you say, so damn pious on this stuff, for this chap to say, no, he's too Jewish and sounds quite Mossad-y. That was one of the things that this guy texted out. Look, we probably all of us watching at home got silly WhatsApp groups, and we say silly things with our mates that we either don't mean or we're doing it for a bit of braggadocio or something like that. But if you live by the sword, you die by the sword. It's ridiculous.
And I think also it does highlight something that I've had much criticism for this, but I actually find any racism abhorrent, but I do believe that the Jewish community doesn't get a fair crack of the whip. And I'm not talking about what's happening in Gaza. I'm talking about genuine anti-Semitism is not looked at in terms of racism as seriously as other cases, and it damn well should be. I have a load of Jewish friends whose lives have been blighted. Yes, of course, since October the 7th, I get that, but their kids are too scared to even wear a blazer in the street on the way to school. And if you've got elected officials doing that sort of stuff. But Starmer, on the one hand, reacts, quite quickly. And then today, even by, it's another week, it's another Starmerism. He'll win Plank of the Week for this. He's appointed a new health minister, Ashley Dalton. Ashley thinks that it's okay to identify as a llama. These are in tweets unearthed already by us, journalists. Bizarre social media. Ms. Dalton also suggested that women can have a penis, not a womb like the old-fashioned ones, and she's all for same-sex bathrooms, which has led Neil to say, Jez, it's going to be Llamageddon in the NHS.
How can you calm a llama down? Well, not with the NHS. This is wonderful because it feels like all the satirists can go home. All the people whose job it is to try and write jokes about politics. You're never going to top this. We literally now have a socialist health minister who doesn't understand the first thing about biology. Bear in mind, of course, the Foreign Secretary David Lammy was once told that he thought that men who become women via sex changes could grow a cervix. So he's not alone in thinking. Sorry, this llama is not alone in thinking some of this mad stuff, and it's just as well that they're in the health department. Oh no, wait, that would be the worst possible place to put someone who thinks that people should be treated as llamas. Are we going to start seeing NHS hospitals turned into zoos?
Well, it's as Harry Cole said. Harry Cole didn't even realise what he said an hour ago. He said it's like the vetting process at number 10 has gone completely wrong. I mean, it's beyond ludicrous. So you've got this sort of government that don't seem to get the message, and then you've got other stuff today. I mean, listen, I want to hear your response to this next story, you guys. 0344 499 1000. Maybe it's just me as I approach 60. Gen Z, JP, think Britain is racist, and 90% of them would not ever take part in defending our nation. They think our legacy and our history is a disgrace. I've every right as I get older to sit here and say, actually, I do it calmly instead of calling them a bunch of entitled idiots. I get really angry. Of course, people made mistakes in the past. People are making mistakes in the Labour government now and in the Tory government before. But at what point do these Gen Zers, or in fact people who come to this country and slag it off, appreciate that they wouldn't have the democracy, the liberty, the freedom that the United Kingdom offers them, and that makes it such an attractive proposition? I think that's what gets in my head a lot. You want to come here and then you slag it off, or you want to come here and you try and knock it down and build something else that you say you've escaped from. And Gen Zers, who have never done an honest day's work in their life, think they know the answer to what happened in 1940. They should be bloody grateful this country's here, shouldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely right. And there's two things in there. I don't want to go too off topic, but people that arrive in this country ought to be incredibly grateful, whether they're given asylum or even just given a visa and an opportunity to work and live in what really ought to be the greatest country in the history of the earth. And if they in any way break various rules, they should be deported straight away. I'm glad to see that someone like Rob Jenrick started deporting people who were here on student visas, who started saying, yes, Hamas is really great. I don't want anyone who backs any terrorist organisation being in 100 miles of this country. Afuera, they've got to get out. For the Gen Zs themselves, I have some pity, and now hear me out for a second.
Yep.
They have been brought up in a world in which everybody tells them all the time that the United Kingdom and the United States of America and Australia and Canada and New Zealand are the worst, most racist, sexist, what else, homophobic, transphobic.
Who tells them? All right, who tells them? Their education system.
Well, not necessarily teachers, but certainly some teachers. A lot of lefties in the media, a lot of people on TikTok are telling them this. A lot of, I think, probably funded by the Chinese and the Russians to make us hate our country. So if they're told all of this stuff and you've not got educationalists pushing back, you've not got people cutting the funding of any organisation that says or promotes any of this stuff, and the rest of us have been, frankly, too timid in standing up and saying, no, this is the greatest country in the history of the earth, and defending it properly. Is it that much of a surprise they've been so brainwashed? Of course it's utterly depressing, and of course it bodes very ill if there's a war coming up, but I've got some sympathy, and I blame perhaps the rest of us, maybe not you and me and people watching at home, but for not standing up and saying, no, this is a great country. And certainly on the issue of slavery, right, which I think is just something we've inherited from the Americans because that was their original sin, and it's been a big deal in their universities and schools, and it is a dark, complicated moment in the foundation of that country and all the rest of it. We can go into all that. The United Kingdom was the country that first amongst any country ever ended slavery.
Yes, it was.
It cost thousands of lives. It cost a huge amount of money that, by the way, we didn't even finish paying off until 2015. And we spent 50 years of blood and treasure before the Americans ever even had their own civil war on this issue, trying to stop this. No holy book ever said slavery was wrong. No other country on earth ever thought this was a problem. Even Spartacus didn't really mind about slavery. He just didn't, fair enough, want to be one himself. And yet it was this country that stopped that. Let's teach that properly. Let's teach the real history, country, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then we'll see if people are so self-hating on this country, because I've got a feeling they'd love Britain just as much as you and me and everybody at home watching if they knew the truth.
I'll take that from you. I think it's great. Can I get you to your feeling also? Oh, can we do a call very quickly? Don't go anywhere. This is Andrew in Brighton, Gen Z. Andrew, James Price is with me. What you got?
Oh, hello. Yes, only 75% of Generation Z are indigenous white British people. So the people who will not fight for Britain and think it's racist are probably not just the left-wing kids who've been brainwashed by the Marxist school teachers, but young people from African, Caribbean, Asian, Muslim backgrounds who are all convinced Britain is racist. You would not expect them to be very patriotic. So put that in context. Only 75% of Generation Z are indigenous white British. So maybe then you can see why we have this finding.
Andrew, thank you. Andrew in Brighton. James, your response?
Well, I don't like the idea of us having to go down ethnic lines on these sorts of things. Plenty, and this might sound like a cop-out answer, but, loads of my mates who are not white are very, very patriotic people. They love this country, all that sort of stuff. So I don't think we need to worry about that. And if we can make Britain an actually successful, multi-ethnic, pluralist country that doesn't look at race, but does say that anybody who ascribes to the, not just the British values, because I think that's a bit of a weasel word as well, Anglo values that won at the end of the Cold War, let's say, have become so successful and so universal that everyone just assumes that they're universal values. But just even British ways of living. Roger Scruton, the philosopher, would call oikophilia a love of place, not a love of oiks necessarily.
No.
If you can spread that kind of feeling of pride in our traditions and our customs and our mores, that sort of stuff doesn't need to be in any way, shape or form on racial lines. But I do agree that when you've got a lot of people who've been coming here who are recent arrivals, in huge numbers, by the way, and no real active attempt by the state to try and encourage any assimilation or integration. It's all very well some people saying, oh yeah, well, society needs to go and do that. But you try going up to a scary looking person who looks like they've only just arrived recently and say, please, can you turn your music down on the train? There have been reports where foreigners have gone and stabbed people for asking that. So I do think there is a big problem with integration and assimilation here. But I think that if we go down the racial lines, then that's a really dangerous
I agree with that. It's a bit like the people who go, I mean, I committed crime because I was brought up, in poverty in North, and we didn't have a... Well, hold on a second. There are millions of people who are brought up in poverty in this country who have done nothing but get their heads down and graft and have never broken the law or had a handout, who would be appalled. Now, I agree with you on that. Let's talk about the political, because one party that does really talk, in my mind, in terms of patriotism, in terms of values, about history, about those sorts of things. And I've been very honest. I was a Tory voter all my life until the last election. And Farage's words and Richard's words and the things that I felt that people wanted to hear, like me, that's why I voted Reform. There are murmurings from your old party that the Tories wouldn't rule out forming a mega party with Reform UK. I would never tell Nigel Farage what to do. This rhetoric's around the wrong way. It's changed, and he needs to continue doing what he's doing and see how far he can make Reform. Sure, if we went to the opinion polls right now, you're probably going to get three parties with between 180 and 230 seats. That's what I think, and it might be that the right would do some sort of deal to keep these Trotskys out. But Reform's doing well enough in its own way at the moment, isn't it? And actually, to be fair, the Tories, although they say they're strategising and, Kemi's trying to work out what's important, it's been 3 months and 100 days and we've heard jack.
Well, I think there's two elements to it, right? There's who would be best at governing the country in their own right, and we know that the answer is that is not the Labour Party, by the way. So there's something about the electoral calculus to come into in a second. I think that the Conservatives have got a great and the greatest long tradition of success, the greatest names in our kind of political history of the Churchills and Thatchers of the 20th century, and we can go further back as well. And they've got, therefore, a good bedrock and foundation and a theory of how you ought to run a country. These sort of fundamental ideas that individuals, families, businesses can look after their money and order their lives better than the government can. The idea that you should trust people, that being pro-free markets, all that kind of stuff. And so that's useful guidelines. But they have lost their way in lots of different areas, I think, over the last 14 years and more. And therefore, it's really exciting that Reform are coming along and challenging them on all these things. I think the best thing to do for someone who is a kind of right-winger or a centrist who loves their country, it's probably the same thing, and if you're a Trotskyite, you're not watching this anyway because you're off being a moron. I think that we should let there be a couple of years of the Tories and Reform knocking 7 shades out of each other and see if one of the two of them emerges victorious.
I agree. I was going to say last man standing, but I should say last llama standing. I agree with you. I mean, it's true. I think that Reform should take it as far as they can take it. Let's see if the Tories would respond. I think most people would look at what's going on right now and say this has to change. Well, let's see what's the best deal we can get. Final thing from me, that would be the fairest point, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think the worst possible outcome is that these absolute, well, I don't know, it's a family show, these people in Downing Street right now, letting them stay around and wreck and ruin the country for a second longer than we could do would be the biggest travesty. So whether it's a pact before the election, it's a non-aggression pact. I'd love to see Reform do well in Wales and the North East if the Conservatives can't get those seats, that is, and see the Conservatives get back a load of seats in the sort of southwest and rural areas and suburban areas and places like that, smash socialism once and for all, and have some kind of either a deal or at least, you know, the two-party politics. Imagine if the Tories were the official left-wing party and Reform the right-wing. What a great country we'd be heading towards then.
As ever, the most amazing chat. We've learned about nuggets and llamas and the fact that the new health minister thinks that a woman can have a penis. James Price, I love having you on. I know it's ridiculous. Former Special Government Advisor on Talk Drive 522. We're live across the United Kingdom. You might have heard that breaking news earlier, by the way. Hamas has announced in the last hour that it will delay the release of any further Israeli hostages due to the ceasefire being broken. No word as yet from Israel, but Rear Admiral Chris Parry, former NATO and Royal Navy commander, he's up in the knowledge. He's on Talk Drive next.
We saw the grisly image of 3 men, gaunt, hollow-eyed, barely able to walk, being basically put up on stage, surrounded by men with balaclavas and guns. They left in the most incredible emaciated state. We think, you know, long-term damage, one barely able to walk. And it wasn't just Eli Sharabi who found out about losing his wife and children. Apparently he asked, where are my wife and daughters? Why aren't they here? And the news had to be broken to him just moments after he was forced to say he was looking forward to see them by these evil, sadistic torturers.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Back 5:27 if you want to be on. Joe's taking your calls on the landline 0344 499 1000. Ryan, voice notes, the same number, but via WhatsApp 0344 499 1000. And text messages to the studio 87222. Start your message with the word talk. Here's a man with great respect for on this station. Delighted to have him on. He costs enough. Rear Admiral Chris Parry, former NATO and Royal Navy commander. Hello, sir. How are you?
Yeah, hi, Jeremy. Good evening.
Oh, right, let's do the serious bit and then we'll have a bitch. Literally in the last hour, Hamas says it's suspending the release of further Israeli hostages. I think these were 3 a week. That was part of the ceasefire agreement. Now, there had been, Chris, various stories and rumours of the ceasefire being broken. I don't know if it was on one side or both sides. You'll have to fill me in more. But what's your response to this breaking news?
Well, it strikes me on previous hostage releases, they're trying to fatten them up a bit before they release them because they clearly haven't looked after them. They've abused them. And the PR disaster that's occurring for Hamas means they've got to try and recalibrate what they're doing. I think the ceasefire is being broken on both sides, but I'm afraid to say that's what happens when you have a very ragged border, which is easily penetratable on both sides. If Hamas attack Israel, they're going to attack back. I think Hamas are playing a very dangerous game because if they don't hold to the ceasefire terms, they're going to find air attacks coming in again and disrupting the rehabilitation of Gaza.
Well, this was just breaking news now, actually, right on time for you. Israel has just called the decision a complete violation of the ceasefire deal, which began last month, of course. Defence Minister Israel Katz says, I've instructed the IDF to prepare at the highest level of alert for any possible scenario inside Gaza. Chris, you're a senior military man. There's 2 schools of thought, and I get whatever people say and criticise me, I completely understand as much as I can, right? I don't talk about it away from this show, but the scenes in Gaza are atrocious and revolting and wrong. War, I remember you saying this to me a couple of years ago, is ugly and revolting and vile and heinous, and that's a fact, I'm afraid, of war. We can argue, you know, why do you negotiate with terrorists? This started on October the 7th, or we can say, look, this has been going on for years and the Palestinians have these rights and the Israelis have these rights. But, I mean, this whole area, this whole war is so, to me, they did this ceasefire. I don't mean to be cynical. I never thought it would hold. And I never understood, and you're a military man, how Israel gets 3 hostages and Palestine get 200 murderers from prisons. I'm not sticking up for anybody in that argument. I don't want to have that argument. I mean, I was touched beyond... I mean, did you see the story of the guy, one of the 3 that was freed at the weekend, only discovered when he came out that his wife and 2 teenage daughters had been murdered on October the 7th? The man, the pictures before he was taken, as you alluded to when he was released, appalling. Have we forgot that these people are terrorists in our quest to just tell the world that there's a ceasefire happening?
Yeah, well, Jeremy, we've discussed this before. I've always been sceptical about ceasefire unless you know what's going to happen afterwards.
Yeah.
Whenever Jeremy Corbyn and these other lunatics call for a ceasefire, all they're saying is, let's stop Israel from winning the war. Unless you actually come up with a plan for saying what's going to happen after the ceasefire, you're no better off than people who want the war to continue. Now, the fact of life is, we know how Hamas operates. We know that they're inhuman. They're not actually dealing on the rational level as far as we're concerned. And we saw when the hostages were released, we saw women being mobbed by thousands of very predatory males without a squeak, I'm afraid, from the left-wingers and the do-gooders and the non-governmental organisations. This is absolutely barbaric, and we have to understand that these are the people that Israel are having to deal with to get over their national trauma, and I'm afraid to say that you can't be even-handed in these circumstances.
Do you believe this war, again, not using dangerous logic, trying to report it as it happens? 45 minutes ago, we discovered that Hamas is saying we're not doing this anymore. They didn't allude to why. Israel's just come back and said it's a complete violation. Do you think the war will start back up again? Do you think it's never stopped? What do you as an experienced military man think the next few days, weeks and months look like on the Gaza Strip?
Well, whenever I used to look at these things, I used to look at what outcomes people want. Right now, Hamas is not actually putting forward any outcome that leads to a lasting peace. They're just asking to be attacked again. And
but what do you say if I balance it, which I have to do? How do you answer the fact that many of us were brought up believing that the Israelis would always call for a two-state solution, OK? And one of the first things Netanyahu said after October the 7th, that's now off the table. What's the alternative? Where are these Palestinian people supposed to go? Because Egypt and Jordan, nobody else wants to take them. So what are they supposed to do? Serious question.
Well, OK, let's start with they've only been Palestinians since the 1960s. They used to live in Jordan. They used to live in Egypt. This is a totally confected nationality. The two-state solution is over, Jeremy. There's no way that Israel can ever trust people with the strategic depth, lack of strategic depth that they've got. My sense, and this is me as a military man, is that somehow the people in Gaza are going to have to be incorporated into another state. Now, either that is Egypt or it's Jordan. Now, Jordan perhaps could say, look, we used to have the West Bank. We can take over Jordan. Unless these people take over Gaza, unless these people are incorporated into a normalized state, they're going to continue to be the cancer, I'm afraid, that is killing peace in the Middle East.
What did you make of Donald Trump's? I mean, he's doubled down on it today. He's doubled down on his argument that actually, I should take it over. You can all go away for a couple of years. I'm going to rebuild it, and then you can come back. I mean, is that him at his most ludicrous, or has he got a point there?
Jeremy, you and I both know from his book, The Rules of the Game, he says, look, I'll show you something with my right hand. I'll draw attention to it. It's going to be absolutely outrageous, and you won't see what I'm doing with my left hand. The key play in Gaza is to keep the Chinese out from doing peacekeeping and also doing all the rebuilding as well. That will give them a massive colony on the eastern Mediterranean shore. That's what the Americans are trying to avoid.
OK, that's Hamas, that's Gaza with the latest breaking news. Now, put your balanced... well, you've always got a balanced hat on. You were the Rear Admiral. I mean, that's pretty bloody high. You rose up, you're, like, very proper important. How do you respond, Rear Admiral Chris Parry, to the news today that Gen Z... I don't know... How old is Gen Z, by the way? Can somebody shout in my ear? No? Nobody knows. No? Yeah. No, he's just pushed a button. I don't know how... You double-check, right?
It's 1990 onwards, Jeremy.
Brilliant. OK, fine. So the guest knows and we do. 1997 onwards. Half of Generation Z think that Britain is a racist country and only a tenth, i.e. 90%, would not risk their lives to defend this nation at war. What is your response as a military man? I was interested by James Price, who said it's very easy to attack these kids, but this is how they have been taught in schools and the education system in the last 25 years.
Yeah, they've been very suggestible. I'm afraid James would have to acknowledge the Conservatives did absolutely nothing about it. Yeah. And whenever I went into schools, they were very pleased to see me, and they always say, oh, crikey, we didn't expect you to be like this. And I'd say, no, look, I'm not interested in war. It's a real pension trap. That's the first thing. But let me be honest about this. I talk to a lot of students, people in that sort of generation, and I say to them, what would you do if somebody attacked your family or your village or your town? And they go, well, we'd fight. And I'd say, well, actually, it's much better fighting over there than fighting over here. And the fact of life is, Jeremy, if we have missiles landing in Kent instead of on Kiev right now, this generation will be just as signed up to protecting their families, their homes, their livelihoods and things like that. You've only got to say to people, do you really want to be in a position that the people of Ukraine are in? And I think they come pretty fast round. And if it all fails, Jeremy, there's always the press gang.
Do you believe... I mean, I'm going to tell a story. I don't want to talk out of school, but one of my daughters was telling me about a lecture the other day where the lecturer quite literally said, most world wars have been started by the British and the British Army is this and the British Army is that. And no, you're shaking your head. I mean, if it comes from there, are they to blame? I mean, I started the show by calling them a bunch of, entitled idiots. But if we're talking about widespread indoctrination from the education system, then maybe there's a reason.
I'm afraid to say, Jeremy, if you don't challenge lies and you don't challenge ignorance, and I'm afraid, you know, my degrees are in history, I'm constantly coming across teachers who do not understand history.
Yeah.
You know, they only did Hitler and the Nazis for A-level. Their degree courses were very narrow. My course, you know, and I was lucky enough to go to Oxford, we did everything from the Romans up to the Nazis, and you were tested on that. So we knew our history. The fact of life is most of our children are taught mythology, they're taught propaganda, and I'm afraid to say we need to hold these people to account. The good news, by the way, is if you look at the next generation after Generation Z, Generation Alpha, they're up for a fight. They're also more conservative than you and I are, with a small c.
Well, my 15-year-old son's more of a conservative than I am, and that's a genuine fact.
So these are the people that are going to come along and give Generation Z what for. But we've got to get back to evidence-based things. Look, if we're talking about people, I mean, you know, we saw that the Prime Minister had a sort of an AIDS test, an HIV test today. I bet he had a pregnancy test as well, the way the NHS is going.
Hey, listen, after today's news, it's Llamageddon in the NHS. The new health minister thinks it's all right to identify... Actually, I'll take your comment on this. It's OK to identify as a llama, and the new health secretary, the new health minister, Ashley Dalton, suggests that biological women can have a penis. Last word from you on that, Rear Admiral Chris Parry.
Well, I've got Welsh heritage. I don't want to mix up sheep and llamas and things like that. But the fact of life is, if that's the world we're in now, no wonder our kids don't understand their history and are not proud of their country. For goodness sake.
That's why we've a job to do, Chris. That's why we've a job to do, genuinely. I love having you on, my friend. Thank you so much indeed. Interesting from Bill, who says, Jez, how's Trump going to react to Hamas breaking the ceasefire? Methinks that Iron Fist is incoming. 22 minutes to 6 on Talk Drive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Sound like a start record. It's the only way to wake up. It's the best breakfast show in the land by a mile. For your news, Mike Graham's Morning Glory back tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock. It's at your place. I'll be up at 5 because I've got a 1-year-old daughter who's decided that being a pain in the backside is the most important way to live her life. And I caught her trying to drink a bottle of gin. I mean, she wasn't going to be able to drink it before anybody writes it, but sat there in the kitchen with a bottle of gin at 5:30 this morning. Reached up and got her top was on. Don't worry about that. Jesus, man. 0344 499 1000. Drew's very concerned. Jez, who's going to look after the llamas when the farmers have gone? It's true. Llamageddon. Jez says, Karen, in Newcastle, man, where ye? Come on, the Toon. I think a double cup triumph for the Toon Army. How can we call our country great in Great Britain when we have delusional governments and a PM that's nuts? That's doing this to Great Britain. The British public need to stop this madness. Sadly, Karen in Newcastle, the British public voted for it, and we won't be able to do anything about it for 4 years. Jane Bates, good afternoon. Lisa's in London. Jez, why is your pundit James Price dressed like he stepped out of the Tudor times? Well, maybe he has. Maybe he's at the Tudor times. Let's be fair, says Caroline. I think llamas should be allowed to identify as humans. Starmer and Islock should be allowed to identify as asses. Oops, sorry, I meant donkeys. Very good. Very nice. Marcus is in Exeter. Lovely place. All right, Exeter. I'm 53 and was once proud of being English, Jez. I've since had my Union Jack tattoos done over and would never fight for this country again because I'm ashamed of what it's becoming. See? There's a man who believed in this country, and that's going. Vincent in North Yorkshire's got a very good point. He says, this nonsense can't really be happening, can it, Jez? I'm fully expecting my alarm clock to go off soon, and with my morning cuppa in hand, I'll tell my wife about this nightmare I had where all these woke idiots destroyed this country, but don't worry, it's a nightmare. No, it's happening, and it is a nightmare. A nightmare? Stuart's in Perthshire. Evening, Jez. Sorry, but I wouldn't trust Mr Price any more than I trust Miss Badenoch. The Tories' history is just that, history. And now the time is over, and we need a truly Conservative party to take us forward in the 21st century, and that, my friend, is reform. Gurdeep, good evening. I reckon that Hamas has no more hostages. That's why they're not releasing anymore. Israel are releasing over 100 terrorist prisoners at a time, whilst Hamas merely 3 at a time. And finally, Gary Phillis. The modern-day Conservative Party simply do not represent anything like they were before. Sorry, James, you're wrong. Reform will go from strength to strength, and I believe will form the next government. Nearly 5:45, we'll go to Lancashire. Mike, you're on Talk Drive. A very good evening. How are you?
Good evening, Jeremy. It's a long time since I spoke to you.
Oh. How am I supposed to remember that? I can't even remember where my socks are, man. When did we last speak?
I don't even remember what happened yesterday with this lot in government.
Crack on.
Right, Jeremy, I am 67. I have got all sorts wrong with me, and I look after my 91-year-old mother. We can't get anything.
Of course you don't.
And yet I see this thing about bloody chicken nuggets and stuff. No wonder everybody's up in arms, Jeremy.
You know what? It would be... I'm sure people are tuning in going, why is he talking about chicken nuggets? It's on the front page of the Telegraph. That's why. Yeah. For people who have just come in, and Mike makes a really salient point, this man, this illegal migrant, committed a heinous crime that I can't go into and was due to be deported. What we enabled him, it's a really good word, enabled him to do in this country was to use taxpayers' money to grab a left-wing human rights lawyer who could find some dodgy part of a law, the European Court of Human Rights, some dodgy law that they set up that's completely unfit for purpose, and keep himself in this country, because if he was sent back to Albania with his family, his 10-year-old would be traumatised because the chicken nuggets in Albania are not up to scratch compared to the ones in Great Britain. It's an absolute joke, man. Oh, he's gone. Hello, he's there. Are you there? It's a joke, isn't it? Your mother gets nothing.
I'll tell you what as well, Jeremy. Can I tell you something about the NHS?
Yeah.
I've got rheumatoid arthritis, right? So I have got to go for these different scans. The last time I went for a scan, they scanned on my abdomen, and they asked me was I pregnant. I said...
sorry, I've just dripped my tea all over my trousers. Sorry?
Yeah. So I went for a scan on my abdomen, and they, are you pregnant?
Oh, right. Well, sorry, I thought you meant your backside. I was a bit confused there, right?
No, my belly, on my belly.
So you look pregnant?
Well, I do, because I'm a 67-year-old man. I've got a beer belly.
OK, but no baby inside?
No, but I said, right, you tell me, right, you're scanning me. Tell me whether I'm having a single baby, twins, or triplets.
Probably. I've no idea. But listen, don't worry. We've got a health minister who thinks a woman can have a penis.
I know, Jeremy. It's a joke, isn't it? No, Jeremy, I'm a gay man as well. and all this trans business and all the bloody things about gay rights and...
I love your passion, Mike, but most of all, I love the fact you look after your mum. Give her my best, and thank you for phoning the show. 6:15. We'll head to Ilford in Essex. All right, Del Boy?
Oh, hello. Is that me?
What?
Yeah, Del Boy. Hi, Jeremy.
Del Boy from Essex. You couldn't write that, could you? What do? Sell second-hand dodgy cars or what?
I'm a London taxi driver.
Are you, son? All right, before we go any further, stop. Right, two questions to a London taxi driver. How much do you hate...
It's not a question. It's listening to the news is very upsetting, the chicken thing. But as a Jew... I've got to thank you for your support. We take a lot of stick, but when you get to, I think it's 2 MPs that were saying nasty things.
Yeah.
Is that correct? So Labour are still the anti-Semitic party, therefore, surely.
Well, I think they'd struggle not to, but you've got to answer me 2 questions. And you talked over me. You're a London taxi driver. Describe in 2 sentences without swearing what you think of Sadiq Khan.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, well, who the hell do you think I'm talking to?
I never mentioned Sadiq.
No, I'm asking you, because all London cab drivers say...
Of him. Oh, I see, yes. We call him Sadiq Carnage. I think that the guy has ruined London.
Right.
And for me, driving at 20 is virtually impossible. I actually recently went on a course... Yeah. Doing 24. It's very, very difficult. The yellow box junction, they are making life very sad, I think.
I agree. And the final question is from Ilford. Del Boy, which football team do you support?
No, I'm from Romford, but yeah, actually, of course, I'm Jewish, so it's Tottenham, isn't it?
Get off the phone. Goodbye, Del Boy. 0344 499 1000 from your correspondent in Tirana in Albania. We love chicken nuggets. Chicken nuggets are available through various means, including imported products and local homemade preparations. Imported brands such as Amadori offer chicken nuggets in the Albanian market. The child doesn't need to worry. It's fine. Brilliant show as usual, says Steve in Cambridge. But this chicken nugget story, in my mind, is really foul. This is Talk Drive. God.
Health Minister has been sacked after saying he hoped a pensioner who did not vote Labour at the election hoped that the pensioner would die. This is Labour MP Andrew Gwynn. He's actually been forced to stand down after not just one comment, but apparently a string of seemingly sexist, racist, disparaging remarks about members of the public, also about fellow politicians. They've been brought to light. He said he hoped a pensioner would have croaked it before the next round of elections. He made the comments in a WhatsApp group for Labour Party figures in the area.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 8 minutes to 6. Push the button, Ames.
Sport Summary on Talk.
Monday evening, we say a very good evening by the man who's deigned us with his presence. He's back on. Sam Ellard, good evening.
Good evening, Jeremy. How are you?
I'm all right. I just wanted to read you something.
Go on.
Scouser goes into a travel agent and says, "Can you recommend a nice little holiday on the south coast?" The travel agent replies, "Well, you can't beat Plymouth this time of year." How are you, Liverpool fan? Humiliated in the FA Cup. Completely humiliated. Embarrassing. Liverpool 0, Plymouth Argyle, bottom of the Championship 1. You give us something positive from that. Go on.
All right, I'll tell you something positive. We're going to win the league. We're going to win the Champions League. Everything's going to be okay. There's the positive to take from that. By the way, that joke, I mean, that isn't even... That's not even funny, JK, that wasn't.
Your mother liked it this morning.
I expected something better than the old, Plymouth's good this time of year. You know what, listen, on a serious note, magic of the FA Cup. Those are the days, those are the moments why this competition is so special. Plymouth, rock bottom of the Championship, 1 win in 3 months, and they produce something like that. Fair play to them. Only thing that I was surprised about from a Liverpool point of view, not that we rested players, but I was surprised that the players that were rested, pretty much the whole of the first team, didn't even travel. I was surprised you didn't have them on the bench.
I was going to say, you'd have a plan B, wouldn't you? I mean, much made in the papers, Sammy, over the weekend that this is perhaps the... And listen, he's had the most astonishing start on his slot, but a mistake to not travel 4 or 5 quality first-teamers to put Salah on for the last 20 to get that goal, you would think, right?
Absolutely agree with you. I think I wouldn't have started those players. I think you can make 11 changes and expect your second team to win. But just in case of a situation where you're not playing particularly well and you find yourself 1 down, bang on Jez, I completely agree. Have those players off the bench and to play 20 minutes if needed. And hey, everything goes according to plan. They don't need to come on. Look, Liverpool travel by plane. They, everything's done for them. It's not like you got to sit on a coach journey there and back. So the only thing I was surprised about from Liverpool's point of view is the slot didn't bring the first teamers. But you know what, JK? Let's make this about Plymouth. Rock bottom of the Championship. They've changed managers. But those days, those moments, this is why this cup competition, for me, it's still special. I love the FA Cup. Are you someone, Jez, do you still love the famous
massive, and I don't think any team should disrespect it because I think it's a hugely important trophy to win for any team. I mean, Arsenal will give their right. I say this, I do think, and I'm a West Ham fan. I think Newcastle have a really, 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 really good chance this season of winning a cup. I really do.
Liverpool, Chelsea, and Arsenal have all been knocked out of the FA Cup, and there's lots of sort of teams in and around. I'm looking at if I look at the league table here, Forest third, Newcastle, Bournemouth, Villa, Fulham, Brighton. All those kind of non-traditional top 6 teams, they're still in the competition. And you look at the football Aston Villa played last night. You look at the way Newcastle are flying. And we know teams like Bournemouth and Fulham and Brighton on their day can be really dangerous. They'll all be looking at the draw this evening thinking, hang on a minute, Liverpool are out, Arsenal are out, Chelsea are out. We've got a cracking chance. I think this cup competition now is wide open.
I would like Man City to be beaten as well because I would love to see... You're right, Bournemouth have been amazing under Admiral. You'd love to see Eddie Howe, whose wife I sat next to last Saturday. I just wanted to point that out. This woman, by the way, Mrs. Eddie Howe, never misses a match. This is an important thing for my boys. I should share this with you. Sits there with the kids and does not take her eye off the thing for the whole 90 minutes. Totally and utterly invested in it.
Sorry, this is the personal question. You haven't got to divulge it. Does she live in Newcastle or does she still live down south?
Absolutely in Newcastle.
No, I thought so.
God's country, Northumberland. That's where I'm going to end up. They're going to spread.
But you know what, Jez? It was a great weekend. It was a good weekend of football. I thought Aston Villa yesterday against Spurs. Villa beating Spurs.
And can I point out how good did Marcus Rashford look for 20 minutes? 22 touches of the ball.
And they've had a really, really good window because they signed Marlon from Dortmund. He started. Rashford and Asensio came off the bench, new signings. And then you already think you've got players like Rodgers and Ramsey and Watkins and McGinn in that team. Then you bring in these new players. Villa's recruitment's been really good. On Tottenham, man, I've got sympathy for them. I know the league table doesn't look good. They've been knocked out. Jeremy, let me say one thing. They've had double-figure injuries for 3 months. This is beyond.
Still expect the people that are playing for Tottenham to run. They are not putting it in for their manager. Don't care what you tell me.
Jeremy, it's so easy to sit there. The players that haven't been injured, around 8, 9, 13 players, because everyone else is injured, these are the same lads that have literally had to play 3 games a week for the best part of 3 months. It can't be a surprise that when you're playing high-level games every 3 days, that 3 months down the line with no rest, of course they're going to be knackered. So people that sit there...
Still don't think it's good enough.
I'm not sure that's fair, Jeremy.
Still don't think it's good enough. Doncaster Crystal Palace tonight, yeah, whatever. Let's talk about the Super Bowl. I didn't watch the Super Bowl. My son stayed up and watched it. I know that the Kansas City Chiefs are going for a three-peat, as they call it. For me, the most exciting part when I woke up this morning was that the Donald got cheered and Taylor Swift got booed. Did you see it? Did you stay up? Were you watching it?
I'm getting my head around it. Were you surprised that Taylor was booed?
I don't really care. I don't mean to be rude. I thought it was very interesting. I thought it was very interesting about Trump. Of course, he waded straight in and said, "I did better than she did." Blah blah blah. It's all about. It's all. Maybe the golden couple, her and what's he called, Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
He played crap. She got booed. She didn't get a Grammy.
How do you know he played crap?
As it said it in the papers. Maybe the golden couple, the worm has turned. I've no idea, but I will say this. Well, I don't even. I'm like you, mate. I don't even understand the game.
No, I don't. I'm with you, by the way, on this. I'm not. It's the slowest thing in the world. Just to dot the I's and cross the T's. I should just say,
yes.
For those that are listening and do want to know the result, it was the Philadelphia Eagles who demolished the Kansas City Chiefs 40-22 to deny them that third straight Super Bowl. They were playing in their 5th Super Bowl in 6 years. As you said, most of the talk was around that potential three-peat, but it didn't happen. Jeremy, are you a fan of Kendrick Lamar?
Is this the guy that has had a 13-year feud with Drake that came during half-time? Yes, I watched it back this morning. I thought it was a particularly unimpressive set, probably one of the worst I'd ever seen at half-time in a Super Bowl that I didn't watch.
You know what? This is my personal opinion. This might upset people. I hate rap music. I just think in general...
Oh, you can't say that. Rap music's great. Ask Jodie. Jodie likes a bit of rap music. But Drake... What?
No, it's not for me. I thought I watched the performance back this morning. It just didn't get me off the edge of my seat, Jake.
Your mother likes a bit of rap music.
What does that even mean?
I'm just saying. She likes a bit of rap music. That's all I'm saying. Can I just say how professional? Here's a very quick question for you. Okay. Did England win or lose the second one-day international against India?
What do you think, Jeremy?
We lost.
Of course we lost.
We're in trouble, aren't we?
Well, 5 out of I had the pleasure of doing the game yesterday for TalkSport. That was a 10-hour barrel of laughs. Listen, look, 5 defeats and 6 under sort of Brendan McCullum and taking over the white ball team. It looks like the side just isn't, but like yesterday, for argument's sake, Jamie Overton banks. Yeah.
I've got to go to the news. We love having you on. You had a long stint.
Outrageous.
Sam Ellard, you're a legend. News at 6 is next.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Just gone 6 o'clock. We're into hour 3 of Monday's drive time on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Don't forget the legend that is Kevin O'Sullivan. I've written it here. The legend that is Kevin O'Sullivan, the man with the biggest audience, the man who is, well, everything to all of you so often. He's here from 7 o'clock, and Petrie Hoskins from 10 o'clock. But we're here until 7. By the way, as ever, our Jodie, who had to deal with her boyfriend Cameron, a Liverpool fan, being as grumpy as anything at the weekend. Yeah. Get your head out your backside, Cameron. It happens. Liverpool were crap. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. You can ring Jodie. You can WhatsApp a voice note to Ryan. Same number, 0344 499 1000. You can text 8722. Start your message with the hello to Rick in Abidjan. Oh, God, he's in. You know where he is? He's in Albania. Why not deport him back home and send him rations of chicken nuggets, ideally delivered by illegal migrant cycling bicycle food deliverers? Interesting. Anyway, I say a big good afternoon. I haven't seen this old man for a while. I say old man.
I've had a difficult life. But...
He's had a difficult life. Ladies and gentlemen, Benedict Spence is in the building. Round of applause. How are you?
I'm well. How are you doing?
I'm all right, but you've joined us at quite possibly one of the weirdest days ever.
Oh, really?
Serious to start with. In the last 2 hours, Hamas announcing that they will not be carrying out any more releases of any hostages in response to the ceasefire being broken. My view, Chris Parry was on, was that it's probably been broken on both sides. Quite tenuous, that as a description. I didn't really understand. Chris Parry said the way that they looked, some of the hostages, he wonders whether A, there's any left, and B, whether they're concerned about the optics. I don't know what you think about that.
I think the main thing to remember is that Hamas is in an incredibly weak position right now, and the hostages are pretty much the only leverage that they have left.
Right.
And it's the only reason that the Israelis aren't going to sort of go in and bulldoze them is because there's the possibility that there might be some alive who might be executed if Israel gets too close. They had to keep as many of them alive as possible for obvious reasons, but it's not a bad point to suggest that maybe not as many of them are alive as Hamas would perhaps like to be.
Your heart goes out. You see that picture of the guy who came out the weekend? I mean, the picture before and after, and then he discovers that his wife and 2 kids have been murdered on October the 7th.
Yeah.
I don't think we should ever lose sight of that, to be fair.
These people are repugnant. They knew that his family was dead. They knew this whole time, and they asked him in front of the world, what are you looking forward to seeing? And of course he was going to say, I want to see my family again. And they're all sat there going, haha, well, isn't that nice? You're going to get a real shock when you go home. Those are the kind of people that they are. They're repugnant. And as much as
I was brought up that you don't negotiate with terrorists. So for me, despite all the do-gooders will say, this is awful, I don't understand. I might as well put it out there. I don't understand a theory where terrorists who have killed innocent people, I know what's happened in Gaza, wars, I say get all of that. I'll be slated for this, but I'm not quite sure I understand why people should be negotiating with terrorists and they're getting 100 prisoners and Israelis are getting 3.
Well, I think Israel puts a very high price on the lives of its own citizens, which is a good thing.
Yep.
And the other thing is, I think Israel is just going to drone these people later. I think once actually the ceasefire is properly off, which it will, it's not going to last, I think there's going to be very little to stop the Israelis going in and going, well, we know who you are, we can see where you are, we're just going to airstrike you. We're just going to kill you later. If anything, it means that rather than serving a life sentence in an Israeli prison, these people might get 3 to 6 months of freedom, and then that'll be it. Because actually, a lot of these people who are being released by the Israelis, they are hardened criminals. Yes. They are terrorists.
Yes.
And so
Murderers.
who's actually going to stop the Israelis?
What do you think Trump's response to it all will be? An iron fist?
He obviously wants to be perceived as the president who can get deals done. But if Hamas are the ones to seen to be violating the ceasefire, he can just turn around and go, well, look, I did my best. I gave them an olive branch. I came up with a new plan. So I don't think he'll be too fussed if the Israelis later on use a lot of force, because he'll be able to say, look, I managed to get a hostage exchange, a prisoner transfer. I was able to make ground where Biden failed, and ultimately it was due to the intransigence of the participants that the whole thing fell apart.
What's your favourite breakfast show on British radio by Mary Mile?
Well, I can't say
Mike
say it's not
Graham.
Mike Graham.
Well, of course it's Mike Graham's Morning Glory. He's listening right now.
Because he knows where I live. I couldn't possibly say that.
We both do. Yes, well, so does Donald Trump.
I was thinking just as a joke saying the Today programme, but nobody's going to believe that,
No,
are
of
they?
course not, because we're paying your wages. The legend that is Mike has just texted me, don't forget his breakfast show tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock. It's at your place. The only way to wake up. Let me tell you that. Now, you have your pick. The news today is extraordinary. Let's just start slowly, as I've started over the last 2 hours. Obviously, disgusting, the Mail unearthing this disgusting series of WhatsApp messages led by the then Health Minister, Andrew Gwynn, subsequently sacked by Sir Keir Starmer. Rumours that there were others involved. Literally, when we came on air, the Burnley MP, 29-year-old Oliver Ryan, suspended, loses the whip. He'll probably lose his job as well. But some good news. Sir Keir Starmer has a new... Oh, God. A new health minister, Ashley Dalton, Mrs. Dalton, has only been in the job a matter of hours, and already the press have unearthed a series of interesting tweets, one of which says, "I'm perfectly happy for human beings to identify as llamas. I also believe," this is true, "biological women," as Jodie walks in, "can have a penis." Sorry, what? For the old days of a woman having a womb. So we've got a new health minister. Jodie, don't. Pardon? Matron. We've got a new health minister who thinks it's all right to, be a llama, spit on people, live in a field. And we also, and a woman can have a penis. Irrespective of the fact that the NHS is on its arse and nobody can see a doctor.
Yeah.
Is he deaf, Starmer? Is he nuts or what?
I know that it's not very incisive commentary, but I almost just feel like going womp womp. That's just basically Labour at this moment. Let's get rid of the
Isn't
bully
it Lamageddon for the Labour Party? See what I did there?
Wasn't it a llama that got shot a few years ago? Wasn't there one that had didn't have its form? Like sign for tuberculosis.
It was an alpaca.
Alpaca, there you go.
Yeah.
So a person can be a llama, but can they be an alpaca?
What's the difference between an alpaca? There you are. Somebody texts me. There's no price. There's no bloody budget. I've got it all in my wages. What's the difference? I'm joking. Alpaca and llama. What's the difference? Llamas can spit. So is she saying, this dork, this Ashley Dalton, that you can turn up, at a hospital or a vet's and say, "I'm identifying as a llama," and spit on somebody? I mean, how does that work?
Presumably because you need to give a sample if you're ill and you're turning up at the doctor. So that's how they'll get away with it.
I thought Harry Cole came up with the greatest line ever earlier. He didn't even know he delivered it. He said, "You have to question the vetting in number 10 at the moment for this person."
He's so through the looking glass, the puns. He doesn't even register the puns.
It was so good. But I mean, we agree with these vile WhatsApp messages that it proves that there is anti-Semitism still amongst Labour candidates. But what was really interesting from those WhatsApp messages as well, the very things that the sort of, I call them the Marxist ideological, left love. There were examples of misogynism and racism and homophobia, all the things that they accuse everybody else of.
Of course. I actually think that we're on slightly dangerous ground here if we are suspending and sacking MPs for what they say in their WhatsApps. Because, trust me when I say, I suspect almost all of the MPs in Westminster have said some truly terrible things to each other via WhatsApp.
Yeah.
A lot of this is down to the culture of how things operate in Westminster. If anybody's seen the television show The Thick of It, people go into politics believing that it's acceptable to talk to each other as if they are vermin, as if they are dirt. And if you think they talk to each other that way, imagine how they consider ordinary people, non-politicos, civilians, members of the public, the voters who pay their wages. They do talk about people this way very frequently. And it's not because they, as human beings, believe that those people are vermin. It is the culture that is sort of ingrained that it's acceptable to behave this way. So I think if we're sacking one or two for their WhatsApps, if we were to go through all of them, I think an awful lot of MPs would be sweating this evening, because a lot of them will have said things about members of the public.
I don't like sweaty MPs.
It's not a good look, is it? But about members of the public, about their own colleagues, about all sorts of things. They will have said some truly awful things.
I should think anybody with
a
anybody with a WhatsApp, could probably think that. But they're
public servants.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
Precisely. If you put yourself out there, then you are, I'm afraid, going to receive a response from people when it comes back and bites you. Now, there's loads to talk about. You can have your choice of Nuggetgate, Gen Z racism, or Tories. Actually, I'm going to pick for you because Anna in Surrey says, please, I want to hear Benedict Spence finally say that he was wrong about Reform UK and I was right. Make him say it. Reform is going nowhere. They will form the next government.
They're not going to form the next government. They're not. I'm sorry.
He's speaking to you, Anna, in Surrey.
As things currently stand, they're not, because the Tories do have enough legacy vote to keep them out in enough seats.
Okay, take this as an argument. Let's say you come from the standpoint that in 4 years' time there'll be three parties on 23-24%, and then there's that whole debate about, could the right defeat Labour? How would any sort of pact look? It's interesting to me that the Tories are the ones that are not ruling out this mega party, whereas Farage is quite rightly, I think, I agree, saying, let's see where we are in 4 years, because if he adds 2 points a year, he'll be on 34% and can form a government. I do think you underestimate how hacked off people are.
Couple of problems. I mean, well, no, actually, there's three problems there. The first is institutional investment in the success of the Conservative Party. Do not underestimate how much money, how much time, how much effort has been poured in by all sorts of people, special interests, billionaire donors, into the success of that party. Simply don't rule it out. The other thing is,
you could argue that they've lost their money and the Tories have lost the plot.
Well,
why don't billionaires? Can you not see a situation where billionaires might give their money to Reform?
I can, but here is the problem that Reform have. Actually, they've got a couple of problems. The first is Farage is a phenomenal political performer.
Yes.
He's one man. He's not a young man. He is only going to be in this game for however long it is. And not only is that a major problem, because if he leaves or has to step aside, illness or something happens, the party doesn't really exist without him.
But you could, with the greatest respect, Benedict, you could say that about Donald Trump in America at 76, and look what he's done single-handedly from where he was.
Absolutely, and he was about half a millimetre away from being assassinated.
I know. I think given 4 years in a fair wind and good health, Nigel Farage could be the next Prime Minister of this country.
What Trump did was infiltrate one of the two major parties. What Farage has done is have to start a third one, and that's the problem. Now, were there to be a merger between the Tories and Reform, then I'd actually be sat here going, yes, odds on that'll be the next government. But there won't be a pact, because as much as you hear a lot of Tories saying, oh, well, it doesn't sound like a bad idea, those are the ones who are actually coming out and talking this opportunity up. There are enough Conservatives, senior Conservatives, who would rather stay out of power if it kept Farage out as well. They loathe him. Equally, Farage is not interested.
He loathes them as well.
Exactly. He's not interested in doing a deal with them, because a lot of Reform voters would go, hang on a second, we don't like the Tories. We thought you were the alternative. So that's not possible.
Do you not think there's enough in that pool in which they're both fishing to get enough to...
There's enough votes. There's enough votes, absolutely. But both parties can't survive. One has to kill the other.
You might be really shocked by this. I think the Tories are on a hiding to nothing. I don't think that Kemi Badenoch will last more than another 18 months.
No, and
I think for them to survive, then I think what they'll do then is they'll go to a centrist. I don't think they'll go to Robert Jenrick. I think they'll go to a Cleverly and shore up their 180 seats with a competent person. That's what I think will happen.
Well, that's the gamble, ultimately, that party has to decide. Do they want the Robert Jenrick character who can park the tanks on Reform's lawn? He absolutely can. Or
He'd join Reform, wouldn't he?
No.
Are you sure?
This is another problem that Reform has. And you
Spence,
can
you're wrong. Sorry, says Johnny. They're all saying you're wrong.
Well, we'll see in 4 years' time, won't we? But this is the thing. Why would Farage let Jenrick, who could very easily be the leader of the Conservatives, why would he let a rival into his party? You think Jenrick's going to go, I'm happy to be number two? No, he wants to be Prime Minister. That's why he went for the Tory
But then take your
leadership.
argument that you said before. Maybe Farage stands and does one term, and Richard Tice doesn't want it, and Jenrick's the third in command and serves as Home Secretary.
This is the problem. I don't think Reform are going to win the next election. Now, give it 10 years, if they're still around. Maybe they've killed the Tory party by then. But is Farage still going to be a frontline politician in 10 years? Maybe he is, but also maybe he isn't. You don't know. There's far too far to go, frankly, to be saying it's definitely going to happen.
No, I agree with that.
Right now, the two cannot coexist and one become the winner.
6:15, what do you make of what Benedict Spence and I are talking about? Do Reform have it in them to win the next general election? Is the support just going to increase and increase? Will the Tories come back under Badenoch? What do you make of it? 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Start your message with the word talk. Generation Z, and I was quite rude when we started the show. I called them a bunch of entitled immature idiots. They think that Britain is a racist country and only a tenth would fight for our democracy. My response initially was, hold on a minute, you wouldn't even be here, you bunch of overprivileged. But, again, James Price made the point to me that if you have been brought up since 1997, and let's remember this, by an education system and philosophies that say, and I was telling the story about my daughter at university, lecturer stands up and says the British military are a disgrace, they've caused most world wars. If that's being drummed into you, am I being unnecessarily harsh?
No, I don't think that it is entirely unnecessarily harsh, because people ought to be able to think for themselves. I've been through this education system. James Price has been through this education system, and we've managed to come out the other side with our heads reasonably well screwed on. Unless, of course, you think that I'm wrong about reform, in which case you must think that I'm a halfwit. But ultimately, it's
I think
not
Anna
impossible.
and Surrey thinks you're a halfwit.
Well, that's fine. We can have a friendly bet, a friendly wager, and I will take my £5 in 4 years' time. But ultimately, people ought to be able to think for themselves. Plenty of people do end up going through the education system and don't end up thinking that way. What I do think is being underpriced in all of this is actually the role that ethnicity plays in it. Now, if you are somebody from an ethnic minority background and you come in and you have dual loyalty, because you're brought up, let's say, Sudanese or something, and you still feel an affinity to the Sudan as well as to Britain, why would you necessarily then pick Britain over the Sudan? Why would you have to sort of divide your loyalties and go, I'm very firmly this and not that? And this is something that I think we've failed to do in this country, which is put the idea of you can be multicultural and keep your roots and all that, but you're British first. In the United States, they don't have that problem, where, you know, if you're an Italian American, yeah, you're not Italian, are you? No, you're not going to go and fight for the Italian military. You're American, but you keep all the
rest
culture.
assured, can you imagine this country being proud of being in this country? Nobody's proud anymore, which is what annoys me after time.
Why I say demographics...
That's why Trump works, by the way.
Yeah, why I say demographics works is because, actually, if you are from a migrant background, you're more likely to be having children in this country. So when we're talking about young people, there are cohorts of people in this country who are more likely to be having young, members of Gen Z, and they are more likely to be from dual backgrounds.
How would you describe Gen Z?
Inexperienced.
Amy's got it on. She's in Milton Keynes. She's Gen Z. Amy, you're on Talk Drive. A very good evening. I feel like I'm going to get a pasting right now.
Hi, Jeremy. Hi, Benedict. Firstly, yes, I am Gen Z, unfortunately. I also want to caveat that I'm also from a dual... my mum's Mexican and my dad's British, so I know that you're just talking about that. So yeah, I'm one of the more senior members of Gen Z, and I do think that this country is worth fighting for and worthy of protecting our values. And I think the reasons are fairly simple and fairly uncomplicated, and I've got one of two here. I go to church by myself, Catholic church, every single Sunday, and I learn from the Bible. I'm not terribly religious, but I think there's lessons and values that instills. And secondly, and I was about to say that I read history books, I'd be lying. My brother and my dad read history books, and they bang on about the last 1,000 years in detail, and there's so much you can learn and take from the importance of protection and the evolution of a civilization. So with those two things, they give me my values, and they also educate me in that I have a nation worth fighting for. And I think it's the lack of conservatism, not the political party, that has been lacked, and I think it's years of liberalisation and propaganda that has stripped my generation.
I want to jump in and ask quickly, Benedict. I'm sure we'll have something to ask. You talk about years of liberalisation and politicising. Were you at university or college?
I did go to university, yeah.
Did you feel that there was a sort of dearth of there was a certain attitude amongst the educational system for Gen Z that was perhaps negative about the past?
I think I was very lucky, actually. I was able to debate freely, and I had that. My brother, however, who's going through university at the moment, experiences the complete opposite, and it's very kind of stay hush-hush about what you truly think.
Yeah. I mean, Benedict, I've heard this from my daughter who's at university.
Oh, well, that you shouldn't sort of express your views.
Absolutely.
I think what we're seeing in the United States now is that is being reversed. I do think that that's possible. It's not a sort of a one-way street. And I think the sort of the revelation that actually lots of young people are quite keen on the idea of not dictatorships but strong leaderships also sort of belies the idea that it necessarily has to be one way. One thing that I would be interested in asking Amy, I'm assuming you're sort of early 20s?
27.
27, okay. Elder statesman of Gen Z. You speak on behalf of the generation. Are you getting on the property ladder, or are you already there?
No, I'm not yet.
I think this plays a very big thing in people not wanting to... If you take the example of fighting for your country or sort of standing up for your country, I think if you don't give people a stake in society, and I think buying a house and getting on the property ladder is the first part of that, then obviously people are going to feel more disillusioned. And I think a lot of members of Gen Z, they simply... It doesn't even enter their consciousness that they will ever be buying a house. And I suspect if you were to ask a lot of
you talk about housing, what about the fact that they're damn lucky to live in a country with democracy and the freedoms that we have, and that is because of the people that came before? That's what I resent.
Well, that's true, but again, it's always been in this country part of the social contract that English people will end up not a lot of land or anything like that, just a little plot to call their own, and it's theirs. And I think when you strip that away, an important part of the English character, not just English, British in general, but part of the national character is taken away from them, and then all of a sudden then they're just tenants. They're just sort of people who have to pay to be part of that society rather than for them to actually be involved in it.
Do you find at your age, Amy, without being disrespectful, that your view is perhaps slightly alien to your age group or not?
Unfortunately, I do think I'm born an old soul. But I think, to Benedict's point there, I think the housing issue is that's the first step, isn't it? When you can buy your own house, then you're settled, and then the next step is to have your own family, and everything is kind of pushed a little bit later. And I think until you have your own I don't have my own family, obviously, so I'm just kind of talking and just thinking about things. Until you have that, I think that's when your conservative values then start to kick in.
No, I get that. Listen, Amy, I have to go, but we're really grateful for you calling it a proper Gen Zer. Amy in Milton Keynes. She's quite young.
A real one.
Yeah.
Not met one in the wild before.
How old? No. How old are you?
33.
So you're not Gen Z. What are you?
Millennial.
What does that mean?
It means I'm really depressed about everything.
Are you?
Yeah. No, it's fine. Millennial just means avocado toast. That's what that means.
Is that what you have, avocado on toast?
No, but I've seen it. I've seen it before.
It's not what it's all cracked up to be and gives you wins. 6:23.
We saw the grisly image of three men, gaunt, hollow-eyed, barely able to walk, being basically put up on stage, surrounded by men with balaclavas and guns. They left in the most incredible emaciated state. We think, long-term damage, one barely able to walk. And it wasn't just Eli Sharabi who found out about losing his wife and children. Apparently he asked, where are my wife and daughters? Why aren't they here? And the news had to be broken to him just moments after he was forced to say he was looking forward to see them by these evil, sadistic torturers.
Across the UK, on DAB+, On your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Benedict Spencer's with me, 6:27. Kevin O'Sullivan here from 7 o'clock. So now, let's talk about... I'm doing chicken nuggets last.
All right.
Let's talk very quickly, if we can. Well, not very quickly. Farmers' protest today in Westminster. We were following that. Our friendly... This is very true, because I've always been honest with the three people that listen. We have a friendly farmer, a beef farmer, fourth generation, who's going to come on the show. Some problems connecting with him. We'll do our best, but no promises. Today, these farmers accusing Sir Keir Starmer of wiping out Britain's next farming generation. I have massive sympathy for these men and women because, in my mind, we can talk about custodians of the land and the lack of intelligence amongst the Labour Party to think they're all minted millionaires when, in fact, they take out very little. But for me, it's a land grab to build wind farms.
Absolutely.
I think it's a disgraceful way and another way of treating a really important group like pensioners. And it's going to bite him on the backside, and quite rightly so.
I mean, the desperate irony of all of this is that the Labour Party was for the working man. And truly, if you could find a harder working cohort of people in the country than farmers, wow. Honestly, it's, as you say, it is about sort of severing that tie to the land, the expertise. It's also just incredibly stupid, actually, that we've got this supposed target of transferring 10% of our farmland and transforming it into for environmental purposes, renewable energy. At the same time that it's going to, the population of the country is going to increase by the end of the decade by 5 million people through migration.
Minimum,
I would say. And just the basic sort of, so where do we get the food from? Gee, I don't know.
But it's
Guess it'll just magic itself up.
But it's the same ridiculous thing as that. I mean, think about it. So you're screwing the farmers, and you're right. You'll have to import food, which will cost more.
Yeah.
You're bunging down wind farms, which your own people have admitted will not create enough electricity for this population, despite the population's going to increase. So you and I both know that GB Energy is a joke, and they're going to import that from a foreign country. So the food prices have got, and the electricity prices, all for what? I mean, some sort of belief they're doing right. I think it's a disgraceful way to treat the farming community.
It is. You couldn't you couldn't make it up with the wind. Wind doesn't work. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. It's not cost effective. It
doesn't smell nice.
Huge subsidies.
Just about to drop that.
Yeah, but there's also the other one, which is solar.
There's not enough wind, man.
No, there's not. And the other one is solar, which solar is actually relatively good if you live in a part of the world where it's particularly useful. And Britain, alongside Scandinavia, is quite literally the worst place on Earth to have solar panels.
I've just bought a house, I'm not going to lie about this, when there were solar panels on the roof, right, next to where the trees were, and the sun never went on them. I just took them off.
Yeah.
Ludicrous.
It is.
It's like a ticking box rubbish.
We could do renewable energy really well in this country. Nuclear. It's just that we're a world leader in it. And the other one is actually geothermal. But the problem with geothermal is, it's sort of done the same way as fracking is, and so people will go, "Oh no, it is terrible."
Drill, baby, drill.
Exactly. Either way, uranium also you can get from the ground. Either way, we're going to have to put some spades in the ground. The Labour Party seems completely averse to the idea of
I don't understand.
Labour.
I mean, there again, Trump to me makes sense. Underneath the ground, we are rich in these things that would benefit this country.
Yeah, Britain, in terms of forget all the renewables. In terms of its fossil fuels, we could have the cheapest energy in the developed world. We have that much fossil fuel beneath our feet. We are choosing to have the world's most expensive energy. It is insane.
Choosing, man.
Yeah. We are choosing.
What do you make of that, peeps? 0344 499 1000. You need to get your brain in gear. There's every single call. Let's go to Harry in Sheffield. You're on Talk Drive. Benedict Spencer's with me. What you got, Harry?
Yeah, great, man. I want to buy your solar panels if you haven't cut your trees down.
You what?
I want to buy your solar panels if you haven't cut the trees down.
Why do you want to buy my solar panels?
Yeah, just scrap them.
No, I've smashed them. We've got a rag and bone man on line one. Right, Harry in Sheffield, the city of steel. What do you want?
I'm on about this Hamas and this Israeli thing.
Yes.
It's all just basically propaganda, and honestly, it does me head in. I was in the army, right? And when you go to war, you do like collateral damage.
Yes.
And this is harsh. This is going to be harsh. But I think the Israelis should treat the hostages, or whatever's left of them, I don't think there's many left to be honest, as collateral damage, and just bomb. Did you see the opportunity when they gave them 3 hostages away yesterday? So you see how many people were there supporting Hamas, whether they're civilians or Hamas fighters. We don't need this.
I think the thing, I mean, Benedict would probably be better placed than me. I get the optics of what is going on in Gaza.
Yeah.
I can point to the fact this started on October the 7th. I can point to the history of Gaza and the problems associated with it.
Yeah.
I find myself in a slightly difficult position because I'm not sure I was brought up to believe that you should negotiate with terrorists. And when I see 3 Israeli terrorists released, as we said earlier, and then I see 100, hostages, and 100, it's almost as good as Starmer saying, release the sausages, and 100 proper terrorists released, you think to yourself, what's that for? Window dressing? I don't get it.
Well, as I say, at some point I think all of those people will end up dying because I think the Israelis are going to go back into Gaza. Broadly speaking, Israel doesn't negotiate very often with terrorists, and that's why they tried to take hostages for leverage. Because, and this is something that we can't quite get as a country of, 50, 60 million people. We're not an ethno-state. Israel is. There are fewer people, as far as I'm aware, fewer Jewish people living in Israel today than Jewish people died in the Holocaust. You know, the scale of death that culture has gone through, that ethnic group has gone through, it is incredibly difficult, I think, for us in this country who are not part of that group to understand how sacred they consider that the life of their fellow citizens. And so if they can get just one Israeli citizen back, they're more than happy in the short term to release hundreds of Palestinian terrorists, also on the understanding that at some point they will get their revenge on them. They will go back for them. And this is why this has been going on for hundreds of years. It's an ethnic blood feud between 2 different tribes. Ultimately.
What do you say? What do you say to Harry? You said, "Look, it might sound harsh, but I'm a soldier. That's what you have to do. Collateral damage."
They will try to get as many out alive as possible, and once they have exhausted all of those avenues, then they'll go back in.
What do you say to that? What do you say to that, Harry?
I agree with Dominic.
Benedict.
I'm
going to call him Dominic from now on. That's brilliant.
Benedict Spence. I'm sorry, I apologise, mate. Right? Okay. But I really do believe that they should be considered. But when we used to go we used to have talks and you say, "Well, we've got to do this, we've got to do that," and they used to turn around and say, "There's few of you going to not come back." So to put another couple in, it's just collateral damage. These hostages, Israelis, right, and whoever else they've got, when we sort Hamas out, they should put a shrine up for these people, a garden or something like that, celebrating these people, what they're giving up for Israel, their religion, their culture, and that's what should happen. No messing about, no negotiating, just basically go in, and I don't care who they are, because this is coming to this country and all, just basically annihilate them. And I'm sorry, that sounds absolutely terrible.
I'm not sure. I would only say this. I'm not going to advocate that, but I fear, and I'll let you go, Harry, but I do fear, Benedict, that you can annihilate, maybe, you can flatten, maybe, but I'm not sure you can deal with losing an ideology that easily, and that's what concerns me, really, if I'm honest.
I don't agree. Simply on the basis that Germany is no longer a Nazi state and Japan was completely de-radicalised, as was, Italy to a lesser extent.
I know, absolutely, Zilch. You've absolutely... No, but I was trying to be balanced there, but I'm not going to bother. Let's go to Hertfordshire. We've got a new caller. Peter, you're on Talk Drive. A very good evening.
Good evening, sir. Pleasure to speak to you. Just on a quickie, regarding our energy and regarding our water supplies, we live on an island, if I'm not wrong. Now, there are places all around the world that use wave power for electricity, that is there all the time, and they also use the sea for their desalination plants. So why do we end up paying so much for water, so much for electricity? Yes, it's a big outlay to start with, but wouldn't it not pay dividends once it was done?
Benedict?
There's an interesting thing about desalination, because it is a point that's worth making, that in a country such as ours, an island nation that gets as much rain as we do, the east of the country almost every year ends up in drought. That's because our water system is very poorly managed, and we let huge amounts of water just run off into the sea rather than collect it.
Leak City, we are.
Yeah, but you would think that with water desalination being as cheap as it's ever been, and us being an island nation, we'd be able to overcome that. Why can't we do desalination?
I've no idea.
Because it actually contravenes our net zero agreements. You can't do it because of the process that goes into it. So actually, we have a desalination plant in this country. We don't use it. That's the long and short. At the exact same time that most Gulf nations are massively investing in desalination because they think, we're desert nations, but we can afford to do this. We will drill all the oil and the gas. We'll sell it off to these countries that aren't drilling their own, and then we'll use those proceeds to desalinate water. And we're just sat here in the middle of the North Sea going, got to be a little bit too green.
Why is it that to the detriment of our own people, thank you so much, DP, to the detriment of our own people, whether it's energy, whether it's food, whether it's water, in this quest for doing, I don't even know if it's the right thing or ticking boxes or protecting the environment, we're screwing people in this country financially.
And you were right.
Ideology is again getting in the way.
Yeah, when you were talking about Hamas, ideology is very powerful, and that's as much the case for green ideology as it is for Islamism. I don't care what it is. People can really get lost down these rabbit holes. But when it comes up against reality, sooner or later something has to give. The British economy is struggling almost entirely as a starting point because of energy prices. Everything else follows downstream of that. Why are energy prices so high? Because of green politics. Sooner or later, that will change because people won't put up with sliding from being a first world country to a second and onwards. Just because this hypothetical thing that the ice caps might melt, even as Russia, China, the United States, they continue to drill, they continue to burn.
But that's the point I don't get. This quest to seemingly do the right thing, whereas this country, this country used to lead. I don't know whether it's a hangover from that, but in this quest to go green, to tick boxes, we release 1%. What about all these other countries? These other countries are protecting themselves. Politicians seem, in my mind, to be centred on trying to do what they believe to be the right thing from an ideological point of view, and it's screwing British people financially.
This, I think, is a post-imperial attitude. Which
Very
is
interesting.
After empire, Britain still sees itself as an international player, even though it is a regional power. And we see ourselves, our politicians, our lawyers, they think that their responsibility is to the international community, the Commonwealth, the nation.
No, it's to your country.
Exactly. They've lost sight, actually, of what Britain is. They still think of themselves as being a colossus on the world stage, when actually it's the folks back home that you need to worry about first and foremost.
Could not agree with you more, and I'll give you a little analogy. When I was a salesman years ago, this great sales manager said to me, do you know the problem with most salesmen? They go and try and get new business. Your job should be 80% of the time looking after the business you've got and 20% of the time going to get new business. Do you want £25,000 tax-free?
Yeah, go on.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
This is how you can win.
It's competition time, and we're giving you a chance to win a whopping £25,000. So what do you need to do to get involved? All you have to do is text the word prize to 83338, or you can enter by post. It's as simple as that. Once again, to get involved, just text the word prize to 83338, or you can enter by post.
18 plus, UK excluding NI. Enter by SMS for £2 plus one standard network charge by 11 p.m. on March the 3rd, 2025. Or send your name, email and contact number to £25,000 cash competition, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on March the 6th, 2025. This is a News Broadcasting Network promotion. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Kev O'Sullivan here from 7 o'clock with his asylum. Petri Hoskins from 10, and the legend that is Mike Graham. Back tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock. It's at your place. It's Morning Glory. It's 18 minutes to 7 o'clock. This is JK on Drive, and I am so excited. I miss her. I miss her so much. She's promised she's going to get on a jet to come and see me. Kinsey Schofield, when are you coming to see me, baby?
A few hours from now. And we're going to stay reunited, and it feels so good. I'm looking forward to it.
I can't believe I can announce this. She's getting on a jet at 3 o'clock in the morning because she's missed me that much. How are you?
You are crazy.
What, you're not getting on a jet to come and see me? We'll make Jimmy Kimmel if you tell the truth. You sent me a message full of Cadbury's cream eggs at the weekend, woman. I know what's going on.
I almost performed the example of what I talked about on your program.
For people who haven't heard this, it was sometime before Christmas. We were doing a segment. We were talking about Cadbury's cream eggs. And I said, how do you lick it out? What did I say?
You said, how do you eat it? And I said, I put the whole thing in my mouth.
Yes, that made Jimmy Kimmel's quotes of the year across American networks. So so you sent me over the weekend pictures of Cadbury's cream eggs, and I had a bit of a funny turn. Anyway, you are coming to the United Kingdom. You are coming to see us, aren't you? When are you coming to see us?
On Wednesday, I see you.
Oh, bless you. Well, I'm so excited, and I hope you fly safe. So much I want to talk to you about. I don't know if have we got the footage of what. If you are watching on YouTube, this piece of footage is the most extraordinary. Anyway, this will be on Jimmy Kimmel. You'll know that Harry and Meghan made a big thing, quite rightly. I think it's one of the good things he did was the Invictus Games. Veterans who have been disabled and suffered life-changing injuries. Harry and Meghan decided to arrive at the Invictus Game past a stream of disabled people in wheelchairs on a golf buggy. Have a watch. So they are driving, sitting on the back of a golf buggy, waving at all these people who can't walk. It's not the greatest optic I've ever seen in my life, in the history of the world. Kinsey Schofield, thoughts?
This is not a parade. I mean, the way first of all, Meghan is putting all this stuff out on her Instagram. It gives you a real insight into how completely oblivious she is of the disdain that exists for her when she pushes the woman's wheelchair without asking her permission, and the woman from Teen Canada is so caught off guard that she stops a conversation mid-sentence to see what's going on. Meghan is providing us with this content. I mean, you need another set of eyeballs, Meghan Markle. But yeah, it looks like a Mardi Gras parade. People aren't there to see you. They're there to compete for their country. They're there to build their own confidence, to make their families proud. It's not the Harry and Meghan worship show, and it is so bizarre to witness the way that they are choosing to brand themselves throughout this week.
It's really weird, and I said it, and I think it's fair to say, I think Invictus is one of the greatest things to be created, and fair play to him. But you can just see, and people will say, oh, you're being really cynical about Meghan Markle. Yes, I am actually being cynical with Kinsey, because I think she is milking an incredible situation, and something that's done an awful lot of good. She's milking it for her own ends. And what I think is interesting is, it's a bit like the politicians in this country, and I don't expect you to have an opinion on this, but she's deaf, man. People have sussed it out. People know that Meghan Markle is manipulating whatever she can for her own ends, and that's not going to go away. That's the point. It's not going to go away. People are not going to change their minds at all, Kinsey. They're not.
Well, there are two big things going on here. Vanity Fair recently released that scathing article that claims someone from Meghan Markle's team was shopping a post-divorce book to publishers, trying to determine how much that would be worth. You know, Vanity Fair had to go through several attorneys before that was put in print. Additionally, Meghan's got a show coming out on March 4th on Netflix. So
is this the cooking show where she doesn't cook anything? Why are we even talking about it?
Well, I'm telling you, the reason that you're seeing so much marketing, so much effort from her to be on display here is because I think she's trying to discredit the Vanity Fair piece, and I think she is trying to use these veterans to promote her Netflix series coming out next month. That's what it appears to me.
Do you think that she understands that the sort of across the world the vibe is not in her favour? Do you think, or is she just pig-headed, stupid? I don't mean to be disrespectful, but does she not understand? She doesn't listen, doesn't hear the room, does she? Doesn't get the feeling.
She definitely doesn't hear the room. I do think she has a little bit of an idea, and that's why she's working so hard to try to change public perception. Okay. But similar to the politicians you're talking about, the harder they tell you, I'm likable, you should love me, the less you trust in them.
It's exactly how I feel about you and me. I've told you all along that you should love me, and the less you trust me and the less you want to come and visit me. I know, I'm just having one of those days. Let's talk about something far more interesting than Harry and Meghan. Super Bowl last night. First question. I'm sorry, I've really tried. I don't understand American football and everybody gets angry. Did you watch? Are you a fan? Which team did you want to win? Tell me more.
I wanted the Eagles to win.
Why?
So technically I won. Why? Because I once saw an image of Princess Diana wearing one of their jackets, and I actually have the exact same jacket.
Do you?
So that is why. Understanding it, I don't know if there really is any understanding it. There's a ball, there's physical activity, there's running, there's
men in tight trousers. Did you stay up and watch it?
Of course I did. You know, my boyfriend works for them, so I have technically it's my job. Yeah.
Oh, you know, God, you see, I didn't know that. No, I feel terrible.
I'm so sorry that you didn't know about the other man. Here we are.
I didn't know about the boy. I'm traumatized by the whole thing, and now he works at the NFL. And he's going to come and beat me up with his ball or something. That'll be the next thing. I thought one of the greatest things ever, Kinsey, was watching Donald Trump, who, on a serious note, is sort of iconic over here with lots of people, because he sort of says to American people, we'll make you richer, safer, prouder. Yes, please, we'd love that over here. Not embarrassed, skin to whatever else. But I don't know whether he thought he'd get the sort of reception that he did, but he got quite a positive reception. But of course, the big news is, and you might be a Swiftie, Taylor Swift got booed and Donald Trump got cheered.
Yeah, well, you know, I don't think that it helps Taylor Swift that she's been thrown into the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni drama. I think that's really hurt her. She recognized that. That's why her best friend, Blake, was not next to her at the Super Bowl like she was the year before. But also, when you've got Donald Trump there, people are going to immediately remember how hateful Taylor's been about Donald Trump, and he's fought right back. But you know, she's openly campaigned for Kamala, complained about Trump, you know, in interviews, and I just think that people chose a side. There's also the argument that she was an Eagles fan and only became the City Chiefs fan because of her boyfriend. So there's that as well.
Do me one favour before you run. I know you've got to get the plane. What's it like living in a country with the president who does, or a leader who does what he says he's going to do, and seems, although he might be a character that a lot of people loathe, he seems to be rocking it 2 weeks in?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's nice and peaceful. I know that there are other, I know that there is another side of the aisle that is raising hell, saying that it's, you know, the world is ending, but that's not the way it feels. It feels like everything's slowly getting back into place, and we are potentially going to be safer and make more money.
Listen, safe flight. I'm slightly traumatised by the boyfriend. Don't bring him with me because I'll be quite scared. But we'll see you Wednesday. Fly safe, and thank you so much indeed. The legend that is Kinsey Schofield on Talk Drive. 10 to 7.
We saw the grisly, grisly image of three men, gaunt, hollow-eyed, barely able to walk, being basically put up on stage, surrounded by men with balaclavas and guns. They left in the most incredible emaciated state. We think, long-term damage, one barely able to walk. And it wasn't just Eli Sharabi who found out about losing his wife and children. Apparently he asked, where are my wife and daughters? Why aren't they here? And the news had to be broken to him just moments after he was forced to say he was looking forward to see them by these evil, sadistic torturers.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 6 minutes to 7, 6 minutes away from the legend. Is Kev O'Sullivan. Straight back to the phone lines. Dave's in Oldham. Dave, you're on Talk Drive. Good evening.
Oh, good evening, okay?
I am all right, my friend. Get your mouth back from the phone because you sound like you're swallowing it. What do you want to say?
Oh, it's about walking a dog. All it is in the UK, I drove Ed Miliband to explain to me that there's 30 million homes, which I think on average each house needs to have 3 panels, solar panels for power. So
No, this is. Please don't get angry with me. It might be that I'm 60. I literally cannot hear a word. This is about the Can you just move your mouth back from the phone a bit and slow down a bit? Sorry, pal. I think the line's not great, and I want to give you the chance to be on. No, you're going to need to try a different line, honestly. Dave's in London. Oh, it's a double D. Dave, you're in London. Hello.
Hi, Jess. How are you?
See, I can hear that. It's not me. I'm very well, my friend. How are you?
You've got this Gen Z thing mostly wrong. Your title keeps saying Gen Z won't fight for their country. It's not their country anymore. It's been given away. Why would white working class kids? My sons are Gen Z. I would never let them fight for this country, and I wouldn't fight for it either. There's nothing left here to fight for. It's not their country anymore. It's gone.
Bit sad, though, isn't it? Bit sad, isn't it, that?
No, it isn't. Okay, if tomorrow they called up all people from 18 to 25, women as well, because it's equal now, the women would work out why they can't go. Others would work out why they can't go because of religious reasons. And then you're down to white working class kids in Darlington and Essex, which you'll then say, could you pop out there and fight for your country? Which, by the way, when you come back, you'll be thrown back on the trash heap like you were before you were asked to go out there. So, no, they're not fighting for this country until this country is worth fighting for. End of story.
Don't disagree with a lot of your sentiment, and I understand the passion, and actually listening to you, that's exactly why I keep doing this show, because I don't want that to be the overwhelming feeling. That was Dave in London. We're going to give him a second bite at the cherry. Dave's in Oldham. Hello, mate. You back on?
Hi, Jeremy. Okay. Yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah, on walking the dog, that's all.
That's it. Go on, then.
I just wanted people like Ed Miliband to explain, if we have 30 million houses in the UK, and I think each house needs 3 solar panels per house, if they all get fitted, who's going to clean them? Because I've been doing my jobs in Greater Manchester regularly, and every single solar panel has got moss on, and I mean caked in moss. So are they going to attract enough sun for them to work if they are dirty?
Mate, I'm going to leave this show as I started the show, which is I don't understand the whole green thing. Okay, I understand that people will say, you know, you're 60 and you don't care. It's not that. Underneath our ground, we have untold riches, and yet we have a government and a society that seems to do everything it can to make electricity more expensive by screwing farmers, food more expensive by screwing farmers and grabbing their land. We seem to get our priorities wrong. We seem only intent on sticking up for perpetrators, not victims, when it comes to crime. To me, maybe I'm old-fashioned, we're getting it the wrong way round, Dave, in Oldham nowadays. Do you agree with me?
Imagine, imagine you've got to clean your gutter, that costs God knows how much every few months. And then on top of that, you've got to clean your solar panels every so many months.
With solar panels.
It's just money after money after money.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks for tuning in Oldham. I have a very good friend in Oldham. It's very kind of you to ring. I really do appreciate it. That was Dave in Oldham and Dave in London. Dave in London making the point that actually, he said, you know, this isn't a country to be proud for. And whilst I understand that anger, maybe I'm getting old. I don't want that to be the be-all and end-all. I want to be proud of this country. It's very easy, isn't it, to go on air and go, oh, you shouldn't be, Amy. Brilliant call, says Steve. Understands things. Part of Gen Z, more like need to be like her. Anne's in London. As Benedict said, people should think for themselves. Problem is they're not allowed to develop and they don't know who they are, unlike us oldies. Hello to Jeff Armand. He's a bit nutty. I watched the Super Bowl last night and have done for the last 40 years. I went to bed at 4:30 and I've worked all day, says Phil in Portsmouth. And Kev O'Sullivan, how are you?
Don't bother watching it. Go get some sleep. I'm good, thanks, mate. You?
Yes, a lot of people thinking this country's finished. I mean, you can stay here if your son doesn't like chicken nuggets.
It's just ridiculous.
Gen Z
we've got to do something about this. This is these mad judges. I think that they think they're at war with Britain, with a repressive right-wing Britain that hates foreigners and racist. Completely. They're at war with us, and they've got to be stopped. This is insane.
I had a stand-up argument at the weekend. I won't tell you who with. No, and it was a disagreement. And a certain person said to me, you know, what you're saying is wrong. It's really unfair. And I said, we need to look after